Chapter 1901. Ning Shu's face was filled with joy as he asked Consort Xian, "Have you seen a royal doctor?" Consort Xian's pale face flushed red as she said, "Qinxia hasn't seen a royal doctor. I thought it was because the weather was too hot and my spleen and stomach weren't feeling well. Plus, Qinxia's period has always been messy, so I didn't pay much attention. The weather is so hot. You should find a royal doctor to get some pills to stimulate the appetite and strengthen the spleen," Ning Shu said with a smile. The royal doctor quickly came and took Consort Xian's pulse. Then, Ning Shu said, "Empress, Consort Xian has been pregnant for a month. That's great. The emperor finally has a child." Ning Shu smiled and said to Consort Xian, "From today onwards, you have to take care of the baby. You can't make any mistakes. The child you give birth to is the emperor's eldest son, so there can be no mistakes. No. From today onwards, I will eat, live, and sleep with you until the child is born. The harem needs a child too much." "The emperor isn't young anymore," Ning Shu said casually. Consort Xian was dumbfounded. Then, she said, "Empress, Qinxia doesn't want to trouble you." Ning Shu waved his hand. "From today onwards, the most important matter in the harem is Consort Xian's dragon fetus. Give birth to the dragon fetus at all costs. If anyone tries to reach out, I don't mind cutting them off." Ning Shu's sharp gaze flashed across everyone present. The concubines were all frightened by Ning Shu's sharp gaze. They all bowed and said, "Qinxia obeys. You can all leave. Consort Xian, stay." Ning Shu waved his hand. The concubines all left. Consort Xian rubbed her stomach and looked at Ning Shu with a bit of fear. "Extinguish all the incense in the room," Ning Shu said to Shi-er. Shi-er immediately used water to extinguish the incense in the incense burner. Then, she opened the window. "Although I don't know if the incense is harmful, it's better not to light it. In the future, don't light it in your palace," Ning Shu said to Consort Xian. Concubine Xian nodded. "I'll remember it." This consort wasn't joking when she said that we would eat and live together. "Don't think that I would do anything to you," said Ning Shu. This concubine really doesn't dare to trouble the empress. This concubine is deeply afraid. Concubine Xian's jade nose was dripping with sweat. "Don't talk about these useless things. This empress won't do anything to you. On the contrary, this empress wants to protect the child in your belly. Right now, everyone in the court, including the emperor, thinks that this empress is immoral. If you lose your child, do you think this empress will have a good ending? This empress will be frank with you today. You must have this child." Consort Xian bowed. "Thank you, concubine, but it's just living and eating together, it's not a big deal. From today onwards, I'll live with you in your palace." Ning Shu said to Shi-er, "Just pack some clothes." "Nyang nyang." Shi-er was somewhat disapproving. The empress was living in the concubine's palace. Go. After that, Ning Shu moved to concubine Xian's Weiyang palace. He had people carefully inspect everything in Weiyang palace, including some antiques, calligraphy, paintings, jewelry, rouge, and some clothes. He also had the Tan family find a female doctor who knew medicine to enter the palace. He also found a servant girl who knew martial arts. The female doctor and the servant girl who knew martial arts were all there to protect concubine Xian. With Ning Shu, there was a high chance that they could protect the child in concubine Xian's belly. Concubine Xian stared dumbfoundedly at the swift and decisive Ning Shu. In a short period of time, her palace had changed its appearance. Ning Shu tilted his head and followed concubine Xian's instructions. "Concubine Xian, don't wear too much makeup when you're pregnant. It's not good for the child and it's easy to fall into a trap. This concubine will listen to the empress." Concubine Xian could only say helplessly. But looking at the empress, it didn't seem like she wanted to harm the child in her belly. The feeling of sharing a bed with the Empress at night was wonderful. The Empress's hand was placed on her belly and gently stroked it. It really made one's hair stand on end. But before every meal, a female doctor would first check all the dishes, including the bowls and chopsticks. After checking, the Empress would eat first and then let her eat. Concubine Xian's current goal was to give birth to the child first. No matter if it was a boy or a girl, it would be the Emperor's first child. The Emperor would definitely have a special feeling in his heart. Ao Tianzi, who was well-mannered, was instantly furious when he heard that a concubine in the imperial harem was pregnant. Although he had asked someone to serve the Empress in his place, she was pregnant now and these concubines still looked happy. Ao Tianzi wanted to chop the pregnant concubine. You know what to do, right? Ao Tianzi looked at the secret guard kneeling in front of him. The secret guard said yes and then said hesitantly, the Empress and concubine Xian eat and live together. So what if the Empress is pregnant? Let her do it. Ao Tianzi said. It was a good time to do it. The Empress brought a female doctor from the Tan family and a servant girl who knows a little martial arts. It's not easy to do it. The secret guard said, every meal will be checked. This Empress is really responsible. Ao Tianzi rubbed his forehead and stood up. He was going to Weiyang Palace. Since she was pregnant, he should reward her with something. Ao Tianzi arrived at Weiyang Palace and was welcomed by two women. Ning Shu smiled and said to Ao Tianzi, Your Majesty, concubine Xian is pregnant. After 10 months, she will give birth to a prince. Your Majesty, congratulations. Ning Shu clearly saw Ao Tianzi's eyebrows tremble. Concubine Xian was beaming with joy. She placed her hand on her waist and acted like a pregnant woman. She slightly stuck out her belly and shouted to Ao Tianzi, Your Majesty. Ao Tianzi glanced at concubine Xian's belly. My beloved concubine, you have suffered. These things are bestowed to you by me. Use them well. I hope that my beloved concubine will still be beautiful when you are pregnant. Thank you, Your Majesty. Concubine Xian smiled as she looked at the things that the palace servants were holding. There were rouge, face powder, luxurious jewelry, and some strange and interesting things. Ning Shu narrowed her eyes slightly and said with a smile, Your Majesty, rest assured. Your Majesty, I will definitely protect the dragon fetus and let concubine Xian give birth to a healthy dragon heir. Your Majesty will definitely give sister concubine Xian a happy pregnancy and give birth to a smart child, Ning Shu said without generosity. She even had a joyful expression on her face, as if she was pregnant herself. Thank you, Your Majesty. The Empress has her own pepper palace and doesn't need to live in Weiyang Palace, Ao Tianzi said. Your Majesty, it's not hard at all. As long as sister concubine Xian can give birth to a dragon heir, I will be satisfied. Your Majesty, rest assured. Your Majesty, I will definitely take good care of sister concubine Xian and not let anything happen to her. Ning Shu looked like a patriotic and magnanimous mother of the nation. Ao Tianzi clenched his hand under his long robe and said with relief, You are really my good Empress. Ning Shu smiled. Your Majesty, congratulations on being a father. Congratulations on being a father. Chapter 1902. Congratulations, Your Majesty, on becoming a father. Ning Shu smiled warmly and generously. Her eyes sparkled and she looked especially sincere. Zhen thanks Empress. Zhen hopes that this child will be born smoothly and not have any problems like before. Can Empress do that? Ao Tianzi's expression was indifferent. Ning Shu smiled without showing her teeth. Of course, Qinxie can do it. Qinxie will definitely make sure that the child is born smoothly. Don't worry, Your Majesty. Ao Tianzi's mouth twitched. He flicked his sleeve and said, Zhen still has matters to attend to, before leaving. Consort Xian stroked the things that Ao Tianzi sent over. She couldn't stop smiling. She looked incomparably happy as she touched her belly. Ning Shu's expression didn't change. She walked over and looked at the rouge, face powder, jewelry, and clothes. She said gently, "Your Majesty is very good to younger sister. When younger sister successfully gives birth to the child, there will definitely be more rewards." Consort Xian's smile became even brighter. She couldn't hide her joy. "Thank you, Empress." She, put these things away. Ning Shu said to she, "Yes." She, and a few palace maids put away the jewelry on the tray. Ah! Consort Xian's face twitched when she saw all these good things being put away. Ning Shu said, "Empress, this is what His Majesty bestowed to Qinxie. Qinxie will use it anyway. Thank His Majesty for his kindness." Ning Shu said with a smile, "Younger sister, what you need to do now is to give birth to the child safely. You also saw how much His Majesty looks forward to the child in younger sister's belly. When the child is born, don't talk about rouge and face powder. If it's a boy, think about it, this child will be the eldest son. Younger sister, look further." Consort Xian's eyebrows relaxed a little. She seemed to be imagining Ning Shu's words. Then she said, "But His Majesty hopes that Qinxie can be beautiful. Younger sister, you are pregnant now. You can't serve him in bed. Even if you are beautiful, even if His Majesty comes to see younger sister, he will just sit for a while. If younger sister is really scared, I will ask the female doctor to prepare skin care products made of dew and flowers." Ning Shu's expression was a little serious. "I understand." Concubine Xian bit her lips and said. Because she was pregnant, she couldn't help but ask for credit. She felt that she was pregnant and wanted the emperor to see her credit. "Sister, rest well," Ning Shu said gently. He left the maid who knew martial arts with concubine Xian and went to the storeroom. The female doctor was checking the things sent by Ao Tianzi. Imperial concubine, this rouge contains red flowers that cool the blood and remove blood stasis. It's not good for the fetus in Imperial concubine Xian's womb. The female doctor Ning Shu said. Ning Shu picked up the rouge box and smelled it. It was very fragrant. Perhaps it was to cover up the ingredients, so it was deliberately fragrant. If Ning Shu was not here, concubine Xian would have used these things. Who would have thought that the emperor would kill his own child? On the surface, the child in concubine Xian's belly was still Ao Tianzi's. If anything happened, she would be the one to take the blame. She, the empress, had been with concubine Xian all the time. It would be easy for her to do something. Killing two birds with one stone, Ao Tianzi was really playing with fire. Imperial concubine, this is the musk bead. The female doctor gave Ning Shu a bracelet. Ning Shu put it to her nose and smelled it. It was very fragrant. The musk bead was very smooth and looked very delicate. No woman could resist such a magnificent jewel. This is also for abortion, imperial concubine. The female doctor was a little uneasy. She seemed to have discovered something extraordinary. Why were the things sent by the emperor all used for abortion? Ning Shu put down the bracelet and said indifferently, just pretend you don't know about this and don't talk too much. What about the others? Ning Shu picked up the bracelet and looked at it against the light. Imperial concubine, this bracelet is not easy to do anything to, but the clothes and the sachet have things for abortion. The female doctor said with some fear. Ning Shu touched the clothes and sachet with a smile. What did he mean by, I hope my beloved concubine will be beautiful when she's pregnant? Wasn't it just to let concubine Xian use the things he sent over? No one would have thought that the emperor wanted to have an abortion. Without an heir in the harem, it was not good for the stability of the dynasty. Compared to this, Ao Tianzi could not tolerate the birth of a child who was not of royal blood. Ning Shu said, put these things away and put them in a place where concubine Xian can't touch them. Yes. The female doctor wrapped these things up layer by layer and put them in a box. Then she covered them with other things. In short, she did not want the smell of these things to spread. Ning Shu said to the female doctor, "When concubine Xian gives birth successfully, you can leave the palace." The female doctor knelt down with some fear. Ning Shu begged, "Imperial concubine, please let me go. I promise I won't say anything." It seemed that she knew something important. Was she going to kill her to keep her mouth shut? The female doctor was on tenterhooks. Ning Shu helped her up. "What do you think I will do to you? You are a member of the Tan family. You are here to help. I won't do anything to you. To tell you the truth, the emperor dotes on Min Jiaoyi and does not want any children in the harem. If something happens to this child, the emperor will definitely accuse me of immoral empress and harming the imperial heir. It will also implicate the Tan family." Ning Shu said indifferently. "I understand." The female doctor felt bitter. She knew a lot, but she also knew that she had to keep her mouth shut. Otherwise, she would not even know how she died. "Prepare some things for concubine Xian that will not harm her body," the female doctor Ning Shu said. Concubine Xian treated Ao Tianza's words as an imperial edict. She was afraid that if she became ugly, Ao Tianza would despise her. Using beauty to serve people, love will fade. The lives of the women in the harem were like duckweed. They were not controlled at all and were sent to their husbands' families by their fathers. The women in the harem were nothing. The struggle between the imperial powers was only about women. Families were often exterminated. Who would care about how many harem women the emperor killed? Women were more or less objects. The emperor had the right to execute them. How could the emperor be in a relationship with a woman? Min Jiaoyi's halo was great. She could subdue the emperor of a generation and become the envy of all women. Concubine Xian was pregnant. Many concubines came to visit her and gave her things. These things were all kept by Ning Shu. Ning Shu more or less understood what these women were thinking. Children were expendable goods in the harem. Men always wanted to get more women to produce more children. In the end, the more women there were, the fewer children there were. When the concubines in the harem came to visit concubine Xian, they were noisy. Ning Shu chased them away and said that they would come again after the child was born. There was no need for them to come and pay their respects in the future. When everyone saw how concubine Xian was treated, their eyes turned red and their teeth itched. Ning Shu said with a smile, "You all have to quickly get pregnant with the emperor's heir and give birth to the harem." Chapter 1903. Ning Shu said to let the imperial concubines think of a way to get pregnant, so that the harem could have children. She smiled like the Guanyin Bodhisattva. These imperial concubines were anxious. Children were what women in the harem could rely on. Ao Tianza always went to Fu Min's palace, so these imperial concubines were all full of imagination and stopped him halfway, using all kinds of methods to pull Ao Tianza to their palace. Now, they all thought of Ao Tianza as a mating partner, wanting to have children, children, children. Today it was a Jiaoyi, tomorrow it was an imperial concubine, and the day after tomorrow it was a noble lady. In short, they changed the pattern. This made Ao Tianza very irritated. His sweetheart was Fu Min, and these women were jumping up and down, each one of them was like an opera troupe singing for a living. Ao Tianza found reasons to ground some imperial concubines, so that these women could not jump in front of him. It was really annoying. Ao Tianza was angry, making the women in the harem keep quiet out of fear. They did not dare to be too presumptuous to pull people, but they all ran to Ning Shu to complain tearfully. "The emperor does not share the reign and do equally, how can we have children?" Ning Shu also got angry. His Majesty came to the imperial harem to relax. Each of you made His Majesty unhappy. You should reflect on yourselves. His Majesty came to the imperial harem to have fun and relax. How could he allow them to take over? The imperial concubines all twisted their handkerchiefs, and let Ning Shu talk to the emperor. Ning Shu would not do such a stupid thing. Whatever Ao Tianze wanted to do, Ning Shu would not care. Even if he wanted to go to heaven, Ning Shu would virtuously help build a ladder. Those women who thought that they were the empress and had to help persuade the emperor were a bit stupid. Life and death were in the hands of others, and they actually wanted to persuade the emperor to be a good emperor. They felt that their lives were too long. Letting the emperor be a good emperor was what the officials of the previous dynasty should do. Even if Ao Tianze slept at Fu Min's place every day, and did not even go to court, Ning Shu would not say a word. She would not be used by these imperial concubines. The imperial concubines were reprimanded by Ning Shu and could only leave dejectedly. After the imperial concubines left, Consort Xian was a little sad again. Empress, why didn't His Majesty come to see Qinxia? Is it because he doesn't like Qinxia's child? Pregnant women like to think too much, and had to control their temper. Their body hormone changes made a pregnant woman's mood was very unstable. Ning, concubine Xian's belly was slightly protruding belly, and said with a smile, "The emperor is busy every day, he will take time to come back to see you. Now, the most important thing is to take care of your body." Pregnant women needed care, but Ao Tianze, as her husband, wanted to abort the child, let alone visit her. Through her mental strength, Ning Shu discovered that there were 2 children in concubine Xian's womb. Ning Shu couldn't help but grin. Concubine Xian was a little disappointed. In order to protect the 2 children in concubine Xian's womb, Ning Shu had really put in a lot of effort. During this period, there were also some accidents. For example, the amount of pregnancy-nourishing medicine had been increased, and some dishes had been added with extra ingredients. Ning Shu and the female doctor calmly stopped him. Occasionally, when he took imperial concubine Xian for a walk, oil would suddenly appear on the floor, or a dog or cat would suddenly jump out from the flowers. Fortunately, there was a servant girl who knew martial arts. She quickly supported Consort Xian or acted as a cushion for Consort Xian. Concubine Xian was also a woman in the imperial harem. If something like this happened once, it would be fine, but if it happened multiple times, it wouldn't be a coincidence. Concubine Xian was a little frightened. She had said that she didn't want to leave the palace and just wanted to walk around in her own palace. The child in her belly was her life, her support. She didn't know who wanted to harm her. Ning Shu felt that these things should be done by Ao Tianze. The imperial harem was a tool. The dogs and cats were all raised by the imperial concubines in the imperial harem. If something happened, it would be the responsibility of the imperial harem's concubines. They could even punish these imperial concubines. One less would be one less. During this period of time, Ao Tianze rarely went to the imperial harem. He also didn't show how much he doted on Fu Min. Now was not the time to reveal his cards. Another thing was that Ao Tianze found that his waist was a little sore, and the sequela was that his physical strength was not very good. In the past, he could do it 7 times a night, but now he was a man who could do it in seconds. Ao Tianze found the imperial physician and asked what was going on. The imperial physician said that Ao Tianze had kidney deficiency. He then madly prescribed yang medicine to nourish Ao Tianze's kidney, but the effect was very weak. Ao Tianze's kidney energy kept leaking out. It was like a broken vat. No matter how much water was poured in, there would be holes and the water would keep flowing out. It was useless. Ao Tianze was very irritated. He even rarely went to Fu Min's place. No man could directly say that he was not good in front of the woman he liked. Or, his performance was not good enough. It was too damaging to a man's dignity. Ao Tianze nourished his body and nourished it. Occasionally, he would sleep with the women in the imperial harem with the help of the secret guards. In the past, when he was vigorous and powerful, he didn't feel anything when the secret guards slept with his women. But now, it felt different. It made him seem incompetent. It was a little different from his indifferent attitude before. What made Ao Tianze even angrier was that the child in concubine Xian's belly was still fine and was already bulging. That idiot empress actually came over and told him that it was twins in her belly. The imperial physician took the pulse and said that it was twins. Ao Tianze didn't want to hear it at all. The twins were not his children. Ning Shu even praised Ao Tianze for being amazing. He actually made concubine Xian pregnant with twins. Ao Tianze's face darkened. Looking at the happy Ning Shu, he was so angry that his nose trembled. Seeing Ao Tianze's bad expression, Ning Shu asked, "Your Majesty, is it because you're too busy with government affairs that you don't look so good?" Ao Tianze was speechless. "Empress, just take care of the imperial harem. I know what I'm doing." Ao Tianze waved his hand to dismiss Ning Shu. Ning Shu was all smiles. "In 5 months, little sister concubine Xian will be in labor. Can your Majesty go and see little sister concubine Xian? Little sister concubine Xian has been thinking about your Majesty every day. Now, the child can move." Ning Shu, who was asking for credit and didn't know how to look at others' expressions, looked at Ao Tianze with a smile. Ao Tianze almost broke the brush in his hand. But as an emperor, he had strong self-control. "Don't you take care of concubine Xian? I'm busy with government affairs. Just take good care of concubine Xian for me." "Okay, this concubine will definitely take good care of little sister concubine Xian and help the imperial harem flourish." Ning Shu was full of joy. Seeing Ning Shu's smile, Ao Tianze's heart panicked. Anyway, he had to get rid of the child early. Giving birth was simply a disgrace. Chapter 1904. Ning Shu walked out of the hall and met an imperial physician carrying a medicine box. He asked, "Is there something wrong with the emperor's body?" The imperial physician simply said, "It's just a daily pulse check." Ning Shu didn't say anything. Ao Tianze rarely entered the harem now. It was said that even if he went to Fu Min's palace, he would have a meal, then have a spiritual exchange, recite poems, look at the stars and moon, and talk about history. Then Ao Tianze would find an excuse to leave, saying that he was busy with government affairs and wouldn't stay the night. Ever since Fu Min entered the palace, Ao Tianze had the secret guard take care of the concubines in his place. He never stayed the night in the concubine's palace. The only one who had the honor of staying the night was Fu Min. Although Fu Min didn't serve him many times, Ao Tianze would stay the night every time. Basically, they would spend the whole night together. 7 times a night wasn't a joke. Now that Ao Tianze didn't stay the night, Fu Min was a little surprised. She asked Ao Tianze, "Emperor, aren't you staying? I've prepared lotus seed soup for you. It's frozen now." Fu Min didn't care about wealth or glory, but she cared about Ao Tianze because of love. Fu Min didn't care about other people's thoughts. She was looking for a soulmate, someone she could talk to, someone she could spiritually understand. Love was selfish and suspicious. Now that Ao Tianze's attitude towards her had changed, Fu Min felt a little strange. She was worried about personal gains and losses. Could it be that she really fell in love with the emperor? She didn't want to enter the palace before. She didn't want to marry a royal husband. But after spending some time with Ao Tianze, Fu Min felt that the emperor was handsome and talented. Fu Min slowly began to admire Ao Tianze, but she also knew that Ao Tianze didn't belong to her alone. She couldn't help but feel lonely and disappointed. Every time Ao Tianze went to another concubine, Fu Min felt sad. But Fu Min wouldn't do anything extreme. Even in the harem, Fu Min had to keep her bottom line. She wouldn't take the initiative to harm others. Although there were always some concubines who didn't like her, nothing had happened since she entered the palace. Fu Min still felt that the people outside the imperial palace had described the inside of the imperial palace to be too terrifying. What about killing people? What about the glint of blades and shadows of swords? It was completely exaggerated by those storytellers. Although these women in the harem looked down on her, no one dared to do anything to her. Moreover, she had Ao Tianzi's protection, so she had never suffered in the palace. Your Majesty, please stay and drink some lotus seed soup. Seeing Fu Min's expression, Ao Tianzi felt a little uncomfortable. Her eyes were full of hope that he would stay. However, if he stayed, he would have to have sex with her. The problem was that he couldn't hold on for long in his current condition. It was related to his dignity as a man. I've been busy with government affairs recently, so I won't be accompanying you. Rest early. Ao Tianzi looked at Fu Min gently. His gaze made Fu Min blush. She felt shy and happy. Your Majesty, please take care of your body. No matter how busy you are, you must take care of your body. Qinxia's heart has always been by your Majesty's side. Fu Min said shyly. Ao Tianzi kissed Fu Min's forehead, touched Fu Min's face, and then left. Fu Min looked at Ao Tianzi. When Ao Tianzi turned around, he could see Fu Min leaning against the door, looking at him with infatuation. Her gaze seemed to pass through thousands of mountains and rivers, making Ao Tianzi's heart beat fast. He felt that his life had become lively. In Fu Min's eyes, he was just a man without any additional identity. He was just the man that Fu Min loved. Unlike the other women in the harem, they all came for his identity. They seemed to love him very much, but what they loved was his identity as the emperor. If another person was the emperor, they would still say that they loved him very much. Ao Tianzi turned around and walked in front of Fu Min. Fu Min looked at him with some surprise. Your Majesty. Go in. The dew is heavy at night. How can you bear to let me go like this? Ao Tianzi sighed. I don't know what to do with you. Fu Min hugged Ao Tianzi's waist. Qinxia also doesn't know what to do with your Majesty. Take me and I'll stay. Then Ao Tianzi hugged Fu Min. The two chatted, whispering sweet nothings. Although they didn't have sex, Fu Min was very satisfied. At least Ao Tianzi didn't use her as a tool to vent his lust. She was different from the women in the harem. Women cared more about feelings and atmosphere. Ao Tianzi hurriedly found an imperial physician to help him think of a solution. He couldn't keep using this method of just chatting with the quilt. But he was now a man in seconds. Ning Shu did his best to take care of Consort Xian. She came to Ning Shu's ear and told him about Min Jiaoyi and the harem. Ning Shu's expression was calm as he asked, how did Min Jiaoyi react today? According to Ao Tianzi's body, he should be like a pewter spear now. Sleeping for a night without doing anything. Nyang, I heard from Xiao He that Min Jiaoyi Nyang was quite happy. She said. Nyang, why didn't His Majesty come to see Consort Xian Nyang? His own consort was pregnant and didn't come for several months. Ning Shu only smiled and didn't say anything. She nagged, and in the end, Ao Tianzi really came. Consort Xian was overjoyed because she was pregnant with twins. She was 4 months pregnant, but her belly was bigger than other people's 6 months pregnant. Consort Xian propped up her belly and bowed to Ao Tianzi. Ao Tianzi glanced at Consort Xian's belly and didn't reach out to help a pregnant woman. He only said indifferently, get up. Ning Shu reached out to help Consort Xian up. Ao Tianzi picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. Then, he carefully looked at Consort Xian's face, which made Consort Xian feel baffled. Your Majesty, is there something on this concubine's face? Consort Xian touched her face and asked Ao Tianzi. Could it be that there was something dirty on her face? It's been hard on my beloved consort. I heard that when a woman is pregnant, there will be freckles on her face. Beloved consort, didn't you use the things that we gave you? Why are you so haggard? Ao Tianzi shook his head and said. Being called ugly by a man, consort Xian immediately covered her face. Tears welled up in her eyes and she was so anxious that her face turned red. Ning Shu bowed and said, Your Majesty, because consort Xian is pregnant, she doesn't touch those things much. Right now, consort Xian's thoughts are on the children in her belly, so it's inevitable that she neglects herself. To be honest, consort Xian wasn't ugly. What was fat was her belly, and there weren't any freckles on her face. She was already very beautiful. It was just that she didn't have any makeup on her face, so her complexion didn't look so good. However, she was still a beautiful pregnant woman. The rouge and face powder that we gave you are the best. Ao Tianzi said, apply some when you're free. It looks good and your complexion is also very good. Ao Tianzi only needed to look at her bulging belly to feel the anger in his heart. Chapter 1905. Ning Shu saw Imperial Concubine Xian's sad face. Because she was pregnant, she was called ugly by a man and asked if it was torture. Torture. She hadn't seen the emperor for a few months and he called her ugly. Imperial Concubine Xian held back her tears. This concubine has been impolite. Imperial Concubine Xian bowed and held her stomach. She was called ugly and she had to apologize. Ask if it was torture. Torture. This emperor will come to see you after some time. I hope that my beloved concubine won't be so haggard next time. Ao Tianzi left with his hands behind his back. This concubine respectfully sends off the emperor. Ning Shu bowed and looked at Ao Tianzi's back. Ao Tianzi purposely came to find trouble and made Imperial Concubine Xian use the things he sent over. Ao Tianzi really didn't give up on destroying the baby. Once Ao Tianzi left, Imperial Concubine Xian sat down and cried on the table. She cried until her body trembled. However, she cried softly and didn't dare to cry loudly. It wasn't nice to hear. Otherwise, Ao Tianzi would be unhappy again. Ning Shu only looked at Imperial Concubine Xian crying and didn't comfort her. She would feel better after crying enough. It was better to keep it in her heart. However, when Imperial Concubine Xian cried, the baby in her stomach was in pain. Imperial Concubine Xian immediately stopped crying and said to Ning Shu in panic, Your Highness, this concubine's stomach hurts a little. The female doctor quickly took Imperial Concubine Xian's pulse and said, Your Highness, you can't think too much. If your emotions fluctuate too much, it will affect the baby. Is my baby okay? Imperial Concubine Xian asked with lingering fear. Seeing Ning Shu leisurely drinking tea, she said anxiously, Your Highness, what should this concubine do? What do you mean what should you do? Did something happen? Ning Shu said indifferently. Your Highness, the Emperor dislikes this concubine. What if the child hates this concubine's child because of this concubine? What should I do? Imperial Concubine Xian felt that Ao Tianzi didn't like the child in her stomach. This child is your child. He will be your support in the future and also a companion. What you need to do now is to give birth to the child and not worry about such things. No matter what, this child is the Emperor's blood. Ning Shu said indifferently. Oh. Consort Xian was slightly relieved and touched her face again. Ning Shu asked, Didn't the Emperor bestow me with rouge and face powder? I want to apply rouge. The female doctor looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu put down his teacup and said to Imperial Concubine Xian, I don't agree with you applying these things, but if you want to do it, then do it. Besides, this is the grace of the Emperor. Ning Shu nodded at the female doctor. The female doctor took out the rouge box from the box and said, Concubine Xian, this is the rouge that I copied from the Emperor. After Concubine Xian gives birth, wouldn't it be better to use the rouge and face powder that the Emperor bestowed to you? This. Concubine Xian frowned. She felt that she was being controlled by the Empress. She had no freedom at all. She even had to control what she applied. This can whiten and nourish one's complexion, making one's skin smooth and supple. Your Highness can give it a try. The female doctor said. I thank the Empress for her grace. Consort Xian said reluctantly. She looked a little unhappy. Ning Shu smiled faintly and said, don't be anxious. Use as much rouge and face powder as you can. There are still a few months before the child is born. Use this to nourish your skin first. When the time comes, apply the Emperor's rouge and face powder. You will be even more beautiful. Consort Xian was a little tired. The palace maids helped her to sleep. Ning Shu inserted a little bit of spiritual energy into Consort Xian's belly and released his spiritual energy. Through the belly, he saw the fetus in the belly. The two children were squeezed in the same womb. And it was a boy and a girl. They were like dragons and phoenixes. Other than taking care of a pregnant woman, Ning Shu also had to find ways to find out about Ao Tian's situation from various channels. They said that they were husband and wife, but she didn't know anything about Ao Tian's situation. She found out that Ao Tianza often hired imperial physicians. She didn't know if there was a problem with his body. That's right. Ning Shu thought that he had lost his aim. Empress, every time the imperial physicians come out of the emperor's palace, they don't look very good. They must have encountered some difficulties. Could it be that the emperor? She didn't dare to say it out loud. Ning Shu massaged the acupoints on her hand and said slowly, the emperor is still so young and full of energy. What could happen to him? Ning Shu was very confident in Ao Tianza. She frowned. She was young and worried. In a situation like Ao Tianza's, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't do something unconventional. For example, it was not impossible to take some medicinal pills to help with sex. The main thing was that someone brought these things to Ao Tianza and let him know of their existence. Men were strange creatures. Even if they knew that these things might overdraft their bodies, they would still eat and enjoy pleasure in order to stand up on their 3 legs. It was probably also for the desire to conquer. Ning Shu supported her chin. How could Ao Tianza be obsessed with these things? She believed that the Imperial Academy of Medicine had such things. Generally speaking, the emperor's body needed to be nourished and not used harmful medicine to overdraft his body. Especially medicinal pills. Medicinal pills were mixed with women's menstrual blood, cinnabar, and mercury into a lump of mud ball. After eating it, one would be full of energy. There was no lack of people in this world who wanted to be obedient and take shortcuts. Ning Shu blinked and continued to take care of concubine Xian until she gave birth to the children. Concubine Xian's belly was getting bigger and bigger. The 2 children in her belly couldn't bear it. Ao Tianza didn't know if it was because he was guilty or to cover it up, but he let the secret guards visit the concubines more often. It gave people the feeling that the emperor was full of energy. The emperor was great. Every time these concubines went to bed, there would be a nanny with a bowl of medicine for them to drink. Ao Tianza didn't want something like concubine Xian to happen again. Now that the seed was in the belly, it couldn't be dropped. Now the empress stayed by concubine Xian's side all day and failed several times. Fu Min didn't know that the person who visited the concubines wasn't Ao Tianza. Seeing that Ao Tianza visited the other concubines but didn't come to her, Fu Min felt a little sad. She felt that Ao Tianza was tired of her. Fu Min couldn't compete for the emperor's favor. She stayed in her palace and waited for Ao Tianza to come. Ao Tianza also felt bitter in his heart. If he suddenly stopped visiting the harem, wouldn't it make people suspect that there was something wrong with his body? However, every time he went to Fu Min Bar, he had to do it personally. Now, Ao Tianza's heart was strong, but his body was weak. And every time he went to see Fu Min, wouldn't it put Fu Min in the teeth of the storm? Although Ao Tianzi treated other women coldly, as if looking at a pile of dog shit, he considered all aspects when it came to Fu Min 39/39163/L. Chapter 1906. 1 Second Little Show on Net. Org, a wonderful novel for free. Ao Tianzi had been asking the secret guards to visit the concubines, but the frequency was very low. There might only be 1 or 2 concubines a month. Ao Tianzi probably didn't feel good seeing the secret guards visit his concubines. Especially since he didn't seem to be able to do it. Ning Shu had to take care of concubine Xian and lived in her palace, so Ao Tianzi didn't go to Ning Shu's pepper palace on the 1st and 15th of every month. Not to mention being visited by the secret guards. Ning Shu really didn't know what to do with the concubines. If he told them that they didn't want to sleep with him, they might hate him. What did the Empress mean? Was she jealous that they could sleep with him? But Ning Shu couldn't tell the truth. It would be bad if he knew. So, even if he had to save himself, he had to kill Ao Tianzi. Since there were secret guards to serve him, he would enjoy it. Concubine Xian's belly was getting bigger and bigger, and she was applying more and more powder on her face. It seemed that pregnancy spots appeared on her face, making her feel like she was facing a great enemy. She was already disliked by the emperor. Now that she really had spots, concubine Xian was under a lot of pressure. She kept saying how ugly she was all day. Ning Shu just looked and didn't say anything. How could a pregnant woman be as beautiful as a flower? How could it be possible that she was devastatingly beautiful? The hormone changes in a woman's body would always change a little, especially since concubine Xian was pregnant with twins. Her belly was very big. When she gave birth, her belly might become dry orange peel. Concubine Xian would go crazy then. Ning Shu rubbed her forehead. She was always looking at herself in the mirror. Ao Tianzi didn't come, what was there to be afraid of? Ning Shu was too lazy to persuade her. She was very busy. No matter how much she said, it was not as useful as Ao Tianzi saying, "You are very beautiful." Fortunately, the baby in her belly was healthy. Ning Shu asked Shi-er, "Did you send the message I asked you to send back to the Tan family?" She said, "I did." Ning Shu nodded. She was a virtuous wife, so she had to help her husband solve his problems. Not long after, a sage-like old Taoist entered the palace. This old Taoist was sent to the palace by a minor official. This minor official had always been obsessed with alchemy and the art of immortality, unable to extricate himself. By chance, he heard that the emperor had a problem with his health, so he wanted to use an unconventional method to please Ao Tianzi and sent the Taoist priest into the palace. Of course, before sending the pills into the palace, he also bribed Ao Tianzi's eunuch to deliver the pills to Ao Tianzi. As a young and impetuous emperor, Ao Tianzi certainly did not believe in these things. He did not have the same desire for life as the old emperor, so he did not touch these things at all. Of course, in the end, Ao Tianzi still decided to use it because he wanted to see Fu Min. Seeing Fu Min's disappointed expression, Ao Tianzi couldn't take it. Fu Min was sad and disappointed. She asked Ao Tianzi, "Your Majesty, are you tired of this concubine?" Ao Tianzi hugged Fu Min. He couldn't bear to see such an expression on Fu Min's face. This girl should have a scholarly temperament and was calm and at ease. After doing something that made his sweetheart sad, Ao Tianzi gritted his teeth and ate the elixir. To Ao Tianzi's surprise, his body seemed to be assisted by God. He felt that his whole body was alive again, and that part of his body was incomparably powerful. This gave Ao Tianzi a great sense of satisfaction. A man did not need to show his strength by hunting. This was the way to show his strength. Ao Tianzi felt that his body was dripping with carefree, as if he was assisted by God. There was an inexhaustible power in his body. Holding Fu Min and looking at his beloved under his body, the pleasure of conquering and the melancholy from before disappeared. It made Ao Tianzi feel like he was floating. The effect could not be better. With such a perfect experience, Ao Tianzi called the sage-like old Taoist to the palace to refine pills for Ao Tianzi. This old Taoist was a little interesting. He had white hair and a ruddy complexion. He looked old, but there were no wrinkles on his face. His face was ruddy, and it was obvious that he was a Taoist with high cultivation. The old Taoist also told Ao Tianzi that the elixir not only made Ao Tianzi energetic, but also could prolong his life. It was a good thing. The reason why he was so beautiful and young was because of the elixir. Ao Tianzi was skeptical about the effect of the elixir, but it was true that it could make him energetic. He even opened up a palace for the old Taoist to refine the elixir. Ao Tianzi also rewarded the low-ranking official. The old officials in the imperial court frowned. What was wrong with rewarding a low-ranking official for no reason, and even giving him the title of a fourth-rank official? This low-ranking official was originally a local official, but now he was transferred to the capital. First, he did not have any outstanding achievements. Second, he was not a disciple of an important official in the imperial court. What was going on? Therefore, some people objected. Ao Tianzi did not care about the objections in the imperial court. The more they objected, the more uncomfortable Ao Tianzi felt. I am the emperor. Can't I give a low-ranking official? This emperor was really a coward. Ao Tianzi had the great tonic pill, so he went to Fu Min's place more often. Every time he went, he would take a great tonic pill. Ao Tianzi was now only helping Fu Min. The women in the imperial harem were already dirty. Ao Tianzi would not touch those who had been defiled by the shadow guards. While helping Fu Min, he would occasionally let the shadow guards visit the other concubines. Ning Shu knew about these things, but she remained silent. In the harem, Ning Shu's presence as the empress was very low. She would not go to Ao Tianzi and ask him to be a good emperor so that Ao Tianzi could enjoy the benefits. Even if some concubines went to Ning Shu to complain, Ning Shu would just smile gracefully and generously. The emperor can decide who he likes. What we need to do is not to cause trouble, understand? Now that Ao Tianzi saw the elixir as his life-saving straw, he was very generous to the old Taoist priest. He would reward him with gold, silver, and all kinds of rare treasures. He even gave him the title of a state preceptor. Because Ao Tianzi advocated the art of immortality, it became popular among the people to eat mud balls for no reason. Of course, most of them were the kind of pedantic scholars who only knew how to talk about national affairs. It was good enough for ordinary people to have enough food and clothes. Why would they eat elixirs? Ning Shu clicked his tongue. He could not help but laugh when he thought of the cinnabar, lead, mercury, and virginity that Ao Tianzi had eaten. In addition to these things, there was also the cold stone powder. This was a kind of Chinese medicine powder. First, it was used to strengthen the sex drive, physical strength, and impotence. However, it was addictive and overly toxic. The old Taoist priest not only gave Ao Tianzi the elixir but also the cold stone powder. Little Ao Tianzi was always bulging. Now, he was holding his head high, giving Ao Tianzi endless confidence and fighting spirit. The mixed-blood female streamer forgot to turn off the camera after live streaming. Her private life was exposed. Please follow the official WeChat account to see the female May 222. Chapter 1907. 1 Second Little Shoa Org, a wonderful novel for free. Ao Tianzi was addicted to pills and cared less about the women in the harem. Only Fu Min could catch his eye. The imperial physician took Ao Tianzi's pulse and advised him to eat less pills, saying that pills were harmful to his body and would drain his vitality. These words immediately made the old Taoist unhappy. Don't compare this Taoist's pills with those half-baked refiners. This Taoist's pills can prolong one's life. Ao Tianzi took supplements prescribed by the imperial physician in addition to pills. He rarely took pills unless he was having sex with Fu Min. Ao Tianzi was clear-headed and knew that taking too many pills was not good for his body. After taking the pills and the medicine prescribed by the imperial physician to nourish the kidneys, there weren't many problems with his body. Just like that, Ao Tianzi's troubles were completely gone and he began to rectify the matters in the imperial court. However, there was a side effect of taking pills, which was that he could not control his temper sometimes. In addition, the imperial physician prescribed nourishing medicine to prevent Ao Tianzi from damaging his body after taking pills. Ao Tianzi's body was like being roasted over a fire, so it was normal for him to have a bad temper. Sometimes, when he encountered something unpleasant in the imperial court, the old Ao Tianzi might have clenched his fists and endured it. He would endure these bastards until he had his own people in the imperial court. Moreover, these old officials objected out of consideration for their family's interests and said that they were benevolent and righteous, which made Ao Tianzi furious. Sometimes, Ao Tianzi would fling his sleeves and leave in the middle of the imperial court, leaving a group of officials who did not know whether to stay or leave. Usually, when Ao Tianzi was wronged in the imperial court, he would look for Fu Min. Only when he was with Fu Min would he be able to relax for a short while. Watching Fu Min quietly read was a form of enjoyment. Fu Min was different from those vulgar women in the harem. She was not vain and was a woman of substance. Sometimes, Fu Min would say something nice to comfort Ao Tianzi. Ao Tianzi said that he was a coward as the emperor. When the previous emperor suddenly passed away, he rushed to the throne and there were very few people in the imperial court. Then, Fu Min would say that Ao Tianzi was hiding and waiting for the right opportunity. Then, Ao Tianzi would be able to soar into the sky. Fu Min wasn't an unreasonable person. Even if she didn't use her beauty to serve people, she would be careful when she fell in love with someone, taking care of the other party's feelings. Fu Min was now encouraging the man she loved. Ao Tianzi grabbed Fu Min's hand. With a wife like this, what more can a husband ask for? Fu Min's expression was a little bashful and a little disappointed. Emperor, Qinxie is not your wife. Your wife is the empress. You can't say that in the future. In my heart, you are my only wife. In the future, I will make you the empress and make you the mother of a nation, Ao Tianzi promised Fu Min. As long as Ao Tianzi thought that his beloved was a concubine, another woman was flaunting her power in the position of empress, and his beloved had to bow to the other woman and be a concubine, Ao Tianzi felt very uncomfortable in his heart. She hated the woman sitting in the empress's seat. Qinxie doesn't care about these things. I only hope to be able to accompany your majesty. Qinxie will be satisfied. Fu Min shook her head and said, the empress's position is related to the foundation of a nation. Your majesty can't say it so casually, lest others hear it and make an issue of it. You are too kind. Fu Min didn't want anything. Ao Tianzi felt very uneasy. He didn't know what to use to tie Fu Min down. Instead, he wanted to give all the good things to Fu Min. Qinxie is not kind. Qinxie also has selfish motives. When Qinxie saw you go to other concubines, Qinxie felt sad and sour in her heart. Fu Min said. Fu Min's truth didn't anger Ao Tianzi. Instead, it made Ao Tianzi burst with joy. He felt that Fu Min cared about him and was jealous. Don't worry. I definitely won't let you down. Ao Tianzi held Fu Min's hand. I will definitely fulfill your heart's desire. Ao Tianzi knew what Fu Min was thinking. She wanted to be with him for the rest of her life. The time wasn't right yet, so he wouldn't tell Fu Min. Fu Min only forced a smile. Her wish couldn't be fulfilled in this lifetime. Men all had multiple wives and concubines. Under reasonable and legal circumstances, it was considered disgraceful to ask a man to stay with her alone. Moreover, Ao Tianzi was the emperor. Ao Tianzi kissed Fu Min's forehead and pulled her into his arms. Silly girl, I will definitely fulfill your wish. What he had to deal with now was the child in concubine Xian's belly. He couldn't let the child be born safely. He heard that the empress had already started looking for midwives. His harem could only have Fu Min's child, and that child wasn't his. Ning Shu checked the midwives. Concubine Xian sat on the chair with her hands on her waist. Concubine Xian's belly was abnormally big. Soon, she would give birth. Concubine Xian looked at the 4 midwives and said, "This concubine will have to trouble you to give birth." The 4 midwives looked very honest and nimble. They said in unison, "This servant doesn't dare. We will do our best." Concubine Xian stood up with some difficulty. Her hands and feet were a little swollen. When she had cramps in bed at night, Ning Shu had to get up to massage her. Of course, it was very difficult. She almost ran to the gates of hell several times. Concubine Xian also realized that there was someone in the harem who didn't want her child to be born. She looked at everyone as the murderer. Sometimes, she suspected Ning Shu. But seeing that Ning Shu was very dedicated to her, she still relied on the empress to get through many times. Concubine Xian trembled with fear. It would be better if the child was born. There were many dangers after the child was born. If she wasn't careful, he would die. The closer she was to giving birth, the more panic she felt. Moreover, the emperor didn't come to see her at all. In any case, she was pregnant with a dragon child. Why did she feel so despised? Ning Shu looked at concubine Xian who was anxiously waiting. He took a sip of tea and said, "Wait patiently for the birth. As long as you give birth to a dragon child, your future will be limitless." Ning Shu whispered to concubine Xian, this consort secretly asked the imperial physician. "You might be pregnant with a dragon and a phoenix. Dragon and phoenix are auspicious." "Really?" Concubine Xian's eyes lit up, "It's really a dragon and a phoenix?" "Of course, it was the gynecologist imperial physician Zhu who took your pulse. It's most likely true. So, don't think too much. Take care of your body and give birth." Ning Shu said calmly. "At that time, this consort will give birth with you." Ning Shu put down the teacup. Concubine Xian frowned. A pregnant woman would think more. Now, a terrible thought appeared in concubine Xian's mind. That was, the empress wanted to kill her and take her child. Otherwise, why would she be so attentive to her and think of every possible way for the child in her belly? Thailand's busted female anchor's new erotic video has been exposed. Pouncing on the male lead, "I'm so hungry." Please follow the official WeChat account and watch the video online. Chapter 1908. 1 Second Little Show on Net. Org, a wonderful novel for free. Concubine Xian's head hurt from thinking about it. She made the emperor unhappy for no reason and her face had freckles because of her pregnancy. Now that she was about to give birth, concubine Xian couldn't control her imagination at all. The 2 babies in her stomach moved and little feet and fists appeared on her stomach. Concubine Xian touched her stomach and was worried to death. She was alone and helpless in the harem and countless people wanted her to die. It would be best if she couldn't give birth to the babies. She could only rely on the empress now. Concubine Xian thought for a while and Ning Shu said, "Empress, Qinxie has 2 babies in my stomach and I will need your help when the time comes. I am the legal mother of these 2 babies and have the responsibility to take care of them." Ning Shu saw concubine Xian's conflicted expression and knew what she was thinking. He didn't care what concubine Xian thought. Concubine Xian acted up in the middle of the night and her water broke. Concubine Xian held her stomach and moaned in pain. All the lights in the palace lit up and the palace became busy. Even the lights in the other palaces lit up and looked at concubine Xian's palace. Concubine Xian was in so much pain that her breathing was weak. Especially with 2 babies in her stomach, Concubine Xian felt desperate. Ning Shu touched Concubine Xian's stomach and the 4 midwives were busy checking Concubine Xian's body. Ning Shu released his spiritual energy and looked at the situation of the babies. One of the baby's legs was facing downwards, and if that was the case, one of the babies might have a difficult birth. Ning Shu touched his stomach and tried his best to flip the baby's head over. So painful, so painful. Concubine Xian looked like she was pulled out of the water. Ning Shu took the ginseng soup and drank a mouthful before carefully tasting the medicine in the soup. Ning Shu asked Shi-Er to cook this ginseng soup. Drink some ginseng soup and replenish your energy. You will have the strength to give birth later. Concubine Xian's face was white as paper and was helped up by Ning Shu. She drank the ginseng soup and was sweating profusely. She asked weakly, "Is the emperor here?" Ning Shu said, "I've already sent someone to inform the emperor. The emperor will definitely come soon. If you don't shout, you'll use up all your strength." Imperial Concubine Xian was in so much pain that her entire body was trembling. Every time her uterus contracted, Imperial Concubine Xian would groan in pain and her face would turn pale. Basin after basin of blood was carried out. Concubine Xian clutched the blanket tightly. "I'm going to die. It's so painful. Don't speak." Ning Shu transferred some spirit qi to Concubine Xian's body, allowing her to hold on for a while. However, this was Concubine Xian's first child and she couldn't give birth even after a long time. Furthermore, she was carrying twins. Before she could give birth, Concubine Xian was already half dead. Ning Shu fed Concubine Xian more ginseng soup. Concubine Xian said weakly, "I can't drink anymore. It hurts so much." Ning Shu frowned and injected some spiritual energy into it, saying, "Drink some more." "I can't drink it. I want to vomit. I'm so cold." Concubine Xian's hair was drenched in sweat and the hair on her temples stuck to her face. She looked like a flower that had been crushed into mud. Ning Shu took Concubine Xian's pulse without leaving any trace. Then, he asked the female doctor to perform acupuncture on Concubine Xian. "Your Highness, His Majesty is here. He wants you to go out now." Shi-Er pulled open the curtain and whispered into Ning Shu's ear. Ning Shu frowned, "You didn't tell His Majesty that I am accompanying Concubine Xian to give birth?" This servant did tell him. However, His Majesty said that there are midwives inside. "You are the mother of the nation. You don't have to stay in the delivery room," Shi-Er said honestly. Ning Shu glanced at the 4 midwives. These midwives were all handpicked by Concubine Xian's maternal family. A woman giving birth was the most dangerous. If she wasn't careful, she and her child would die. If he wanted to make a move, now was the best time. Especially the imperial concubines in the harem. They had delicate bodies. If something happened to them, it would be very normal. Especially at this time, she couldn't go out. Ning Shu told Shi-Er, "Just say that I am accompanying Concubine Xian to give birth." "Yes." Ning Shu whispered into Concubine Xian's ear, "His Majesty is here. He is waiting outside for sister to give birth to the prince safely." Hearing that Ao Tianzi was here, Concubine Xian's eyes lit up. She clenched her cheeks. In addition, with the female doctor's acupuncture, Concubine Xian had some strength. Ao Tianzi, who was guarding outside the door, had a dark expression. He didn't want to come, but this concubine was pregnant with his child. If he didn't do something, those courtiers would talk endlessly. When he heard Shi-Er say that the empress wouldn't come out, Ao Tianzi's expression turned ugly. Could it be that these 2 children were really going to come out? It was simply a disgrace. When Ao Tianzi was anxious, his whole body would sweat easily. Once he sweated, his whole body would feel sticky. It was very uncomfortable and irritating. Fu Min, who was standing beside Ao Tianzi, put away the disappointment in her heart and comforted Ao Tianzi, "Your Majesty, Sister Concubine Xian will definitely give birth to the child smoothly." Fu Min touched her belly. Why wasn't she pregnant until now? Why didn't Ao Tianzi want her to be pregnant? Every time after serving the Empress, there would be a mama bringing medicine. Fu Min knew what it was and drank it obediently. Now that she saw another concubine pregnant and giving birth, Fu Min's heart was very complicated. The most difficult thing to guess was the heart of the emperor. Ao Tianzi took a deep breath and watched as basins of blood were brought out. It was best that one corpse and 2 lives were lost. There were only faint moans inside. Could it be that Concubine Xian was dying? Concubine Xian's family was not weak. This natural death couldn't be better. If the child couldn't be born, there would be one less woman in the imperial harem. Ning Shu occupied the midwife's position. He lifted the quilt and looked at the situation of the birth. "Your Majesty, your body is precious. Let me do it." A midwife couldn't help but say when she saw Ning Shu occupying their position and stealing their job. Ning Shu dipped a handkerchief in blood and threw it into the copper basin. His hands were stained with blood. The female doctor kept inserting needles into Concubine Xian. It was especially difficult for Concubine Xian to give birth. Her pelvis was small and she was carrying twins. Concubine Xian was dying. Concubine Xian was fished out of the water. Even Ning Shu was covered in sweat. Giving birth was like going to war. It was very thrilling. Concubine Xian struggled and gave birth to the first child. She quickly took the clothes that she had prepared and wrapped the child up. The child cried. Ao Tianzi, who was guarding outside the door, heard the crying and his face immediately darkened. She carried the child and didn't let the midwife touch the child. Ning Shu was worried about the midwife. Concubine Xian fainted after giving birth to the child. The female doctor inserted needles into Concubine Xian's body. Concubine Xian woke up slowly. She was already very weak. "I can't take it anymore." Concubine Xian's face was very pale now. Even her lips were pale. Ning Shu said coldly, "The child that was just born is a girl. You have a boy in your stomach. If you work hard, the child will die in your womb." Concubine Xian was stunned. Then she gritted her teeth and used all her strength. If the child died in her womb, what hope did she have left? The video of the curvy buttocks goddess Zhang Xuexin's hot t-shirt was exposed. Please pay attention to WeChat's official account to look at Girl Gone 123, long press 3 seconds to copy. Chapter 1909. 1 second Little Shoa Internet.org, a wonderful novel to read for free. Concubine Xian gave birth to the child with the last bit of strength she had. It was a daughter now. Concubine Xian fainted as soon as the child left her body. Ning Shu wrapped the child up and said to the 4 midwives, "All right, the birth is over. Get out. Take good care of Concubine Xian," Dr. Ning Shu said. Everyone in the room had been chased out, so no one would harm Concubine Xian. Ning Shu looked at the red-faced child in his arms and walked out of the inner hall. Reeking of blood, he walked to Ao Tianzi, whose face was black and looked like he was about to explode. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Concubine Xian has given birth to twins of a boy and a girl. This is a good sign." Ning Shu bowed with the child in his arms and said to Ao Tianzi with a smile. "From now on, Your Majesty's harem will also have children. With the birth of a boy and a girl, the children in the harem will definitely sprout like bamboo shoots. Don't try to put the label of a jealous woman who harmed the dragon's children on my head. For the sake of your children, I ate and lived with the concubine and even accompanied her during the birth. Think about it, who else in the world is as virtuous as me?" Ao Tianzi's blood rushed to his head, making his face a little red. Ning Shu noticed that Ao Tianzi's face was flushed and his eyes were bloodshot. This was the most obvious sign of the poison in his body after taking the pill. Ao Tianzi almost gritted his teeth and said, "You are really my good empress." Ning Shu said with a smile, "This is what I should do." "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your praise. The children are so cute." Fu Min looked at the two children in the swaddling clothes. There were two of them, a boy and a girl, which made a good combination. Concubine Xian was really lucky to have a son and a daughter in a pair. Ning Shu looked at Fu Min with a tolerant and magnanimous gaze. "Min Jiaoyi, you should also quickly give Your Majesty a child and expand the harem." Fu Min's face was a little red. She smiled and didn't say anything. Ning Shu smiled and said to Ao Tianzi, "Your Majesty, do you want to hold the children?" Ao Tianzi was speechless. The corner of Ao Tianzi's mouth twitched. He didn't carry the child and said coldly, "The child is too young. I don't know how to carry him. I'm a little busy." Ning Shu said, "Your Majesty, Imperial Concubine Xian's delivery was very difficult. She fainted several times. Your Majesty should reward her with something." Ao Tianzi almost couldn't control his temper. She had given birth to a bastard, yet she still wanted to reward him. Why didn't she go to heaven? Looking at Ning Shu's smug face, Ao Tianzi gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. It was simply insane. "I'll leave this matter to the Empress." Ao Tianzi flicked his sleeves and left. Fu Min frowned, feeling a little strange. Ning Shu bowed. "I'll take my leave." Fu Min chased after Ao Tianzi. Ning Shu handed the baby to the wet nurse and watched her feed the baby. Imperial Concubine Xian slept all the way until noon the next day. When she opened her eyes again, Imperial Concubine Xian felt as if a lifetime had passed. "My child." Imperial Concubine Xian said. A palace maid poured water for Imperial Concubine Xian. Another palace maid came to report that Imperial Concubine Xian had woken up. Ning Shu went to Imperial Concubine Xian's inner palace. "The two children are very healthy," Ning Shu said to Imperial Concubine Xian. Imperial Concubine Xian's face was completely pale. Looking at the two children, tears fell down. "Why are you crying? There will be many good days in the future," Ning Shu said. "I thank Your Majesty for taking care of me during this period." Imperial Concubine Xian wiped her tears and said to Ning Shu with red eyes. "Has Your Majesty seen the children?" Imperial Concubine Xian Ning Shu asked. "He has. He said that the children are very good looking, just like him." Ning Shu smiled. "And, very similar to Ao Tianzi." Imperial Concubine Xian couldn't stop crying. She had finally given birth to these children. From now on, she had someone to rely on for the rest of her life. Moreover, they were a son and a daughter. Heaven's mercy. When the concubines in the harem found out that Imperial Concubine Xian had given birth to a pair of twins, they were all dumbfounded. How lucky was she to be able to give birth to two children? Moreover, she was the emperor's eldest son and eldest daughter. Imperial Concubine Xian had all the advantages. These concubines in the harem wrung their handkerchiefs. Their eyes were red as they sighed. Why didn't they have such luck? Congratulatory gifts were continuously sent to Imperial Concubine Xian's palace. Ning Shu asked the female doctor to check on them one by one. The children were already born, but the empress was still here. Imperial Concubine Xian felt a little awkward. She kept thanking Ning Shu, but in reality, she was chasing Ning Shu away. Imperial Concubine Xian was a little afraid that Ning Shu would snatch her children away. Ning Shu said indifferently, "When you are out of confinement, I will return to Pepper Hall." Such young children were very fragile and could die easily. They also didn't have much resistance. If they fell sick, they could die. Sometimes, doing a good deed might not necessarily be thanked. Imperial concubine Xian's reaction was very normal. After all, it was hard to tell what the people in the harem were thinking. If she wasn't careful, she would die without a complete corpse. Many thanks, Your Majesty. I will definitely repay your great kindness. Imperial concubine Xian felt that giving birth this time had greatly damaged her vitality. After speaking for a while, Imperial concubine Xian was very tired and fell into a deep sleep. The two children were taken care of by the wet nurse and Ning Shu. When there was nothing to do, he would inject a strand of spiritual energy into the two children's bodies. Not only did he have to keep the two children alive, he also had to keep them alive. Ning Shu would check on the wet nurse every day. Under the supervision of Ning Shu's mental strength, nothing could hide. He even knew what the wet nurse ate. Mental strength was just that awesome. Ning Shu would also check the children's clothes one by one. He was afraid that something that shouldn't be there would appear on the clothes. Ning Shu felt that raising children was too fucking difficult. Why was she always raising children? Raising children. She was so mentally tired that she would suddenly die. Ning Shu felt terrible all over. And at night, Ning Shu saw people in black running over the roof beams. They even lifted the roof tiles and shot thin needles at the children. They probably wanted to kill the children. Ning Shu calmly pulled over the crib and held the children in his arms. Ao Tianzi desperately wanted to get rid of these two shameful things. Ning Shu just had to let these two children live. Ning Shu felt that Ao Tianzi ate too little pills. The old Taoist priest should have increased the dosage. Now that the children were dead, she would have to bear the crime of being a jealous woman who harmed the imperial heir. An imperial concubine Xian would have to fight with her. The lives of the women in the imperial harem were worthless. Ning Shu coaxed the child. The child's red face was now white and tender. He estimated that when he grew up, the child's features would be even less like Ao Tianzi's. It was better for the child to resemble the mother. The footsteps on the roof gradually faded away. Even if the assassin appeared, Ning Shu wasn't afraid. She could shout that there was an assassin. Don't forget that she had a maid who knew martial arts. Moreover, she could sneak attack, so she wasn't afraid of secret guards at all. Ning Shu wanted to make Ao Tianzi angry and uncomfortable. If he had the guts to say that these two children weren't his, then Ao Tianzi wouldn't have the guts to say that he was cuckolded. The bold video of a child with a huge chest dripping with sweat and a pair of large breasts that were about to overflow was online. Please follow the WeChat public number EI New May 222. Chapter 1910. Falling in love with you, transmigrating canon fodder female supporting character Counterattack. It was very embarrassing to admit that he had been cuckolded and that the only two children in the harem were not his. Therefore, Ao Tianzi had no choice but to kill the two children in secret. Ning Shu rubbed his brows. There was no such thing as being a thief for 1,000 days and not guarding against a thief for 1,000 days. If he wasn't careful, he would be caught and the children would be harmed. If she didn't help take care of the children, they wouldn't live for more than 2 days. However, Consort Xian didn't seem to want her to get close to the children. Therefore, for her own safety and for the two children, she had to deal with Ao Tianzi. After Consort Xian finished her confinement, she would have to return to her Pepper's Hall. What should she do with the two children? Consort Xian didn't know that the emperor wanted to kill the two children. Should he tell Consort Xian the truth? However, if he didn't tell her, Consort Xian would be stupid. Tell her, don't tell her, tell her, don't tell her. Ning Shu decided not to tell Consort Xian first. No woman would be able to accept that she had been defiled for no reason and had even given birth to a child. After Consort Xian finished her confinement, Ning Shu returned to Pepper's Hall and left the female doctor and the servant girl who knew martial arts behind. It had been a long time since he had his own palace. After a period of recuperation, Ning Shu no longer felt short of breath. He slept until the sun rose and ate and slept well. This was a happy life. Now that he was fine, Ning Shu began to torment Ao Tianzi. When he was free, he would bring tonic soup to Ao Tianzi's palace and ask Ao Tianzi to recuperate more and not eat pills. Pills were harmful to the body, blah blah blah. Ao Tianzi looked solemn and righteous, just like the aggrieved and indignant imperial censors in the imperial court. Just looking at him made one's appetite turn. Empress, just take care of the harem when you're free. I know what I'm doing, Ao Tianzi said indifferently. It was as if his entire body had been frozen. Ning Shu, who didn't know how to read people's faces, still said, Your Majesty, these alchemy skills are all lies. It's definitely not good for the body. If taking elixirs can really make people immortal, why didn't so many emperors become immortal? Instead, they lost their lives early. Ao Tianzi rubbed his eyebrows. Was the empress blind? Didn't she see that he was very angry? Enough, we don't want to hear about these things. If there's nothing important, don't disturb us. Just stay in Pepper's Hall. The harem is already in a mess, why are you still bothering us? Ning Shu had a bitter expression. She bowed and said, Even if I make your majesty unhappy, this concubine still has to say it. Your majesty, don't take those pills anymore. It's really bad for your health. Ao Tianzi was speechless. Was there something wrong with his empress's head? Alright, you can go now. Ao Tianzi waved his hand and said helplessly. It was pointless to get angry at such a brainless person. Ning Shu immediately smiled like a flower and asked, Your Majesty, you won't eat dawn in the future, right? When did he agree? Ao Tianzi was about to explode with annoyance. Go back to Pepper's Hall. This concubine knows that you're angry, but since your Majesty is angry, this concubine still has to say it. Your Majesty, don't eat dawn. It's really bad for your health. Your Majesty, what are you howling for? I don't need you to meddle in my affairs. Ao Tianzi couldn't help but facepalm. This empress was getting more and more stupid and pedantic. Your Majesty, this concubine and your Majesty are husband and wife. This concubine can't just watch you eat dawn that harm your health. Ao Tianzi, fuck, it's really hard to describe meeting such an idiot. Your Majesty, you have to agree to this concubine's request. Ning Shu was still pestering him. Ao Tianzi said helplessly, Alright, this concubine knew that this concubine has a place in your Majesty's heart. Ning Shu immediately beamed with joy. Ao Tianzi, wretch, Ning Shu left with a satisfied expression on her face. She had successfully persuaded the emperor. Ao Tianzi rubbed his forehead tiredly. He took out a box from the drawer and opened it. Inside the box were perfectly round dawn. Ao Tianzi took one and swallowed it. This dawn could replenish one's energy. Sometimes, when Ao Tianzi was tired, he would take one out and eat it. It was quite energizing. Ning Shu walked out of the palace and met an old Taoist priest in a Taoist robe. The old Taoist priest had white hair and a youthful complexion. He was brimming with energy. They met on a narrow path. The old Taoist priest sized up Ning Shu, then flicked his horsetail whisk. This humble Taoist greets your Majesty the Empress. Ning Shu raised her eyebrows and asked, How did you know that I'm the Empress? She was dressed very simply today. In this humble Taoist's eyes, the Empress is surrounded by golden phoenixes, and the cries of phoenixes are loud. In this world, only the mother of a nation can have such luck, the old Taoist priest said enigmatically. Who in this palace didn't know that she was the Empress? The old Taoist priest wasn't the least bit curious about Ning Shu's identity. Ning Shu nodded. You're really capable. This humble Taoist priest previously thought that you were a swindler and even asked His Majesty not to eat your dawn. Now it seems that you're someone with real ability and not a half-baked swindler. Then I'll leave His Majesty's health to you in the future. The old Taoist priest was speechless. Was it really good to be so honest? Since this humble Taoist has entered the palace, this humble Taoist will definitely put His Majesty's health first. Ning Shu nodded. Can you give this humble Taoist priest a pill? This humble Taoist priest wants to try it and see how effective it is. The old Taoist priest was very reserved. He took out a bottle and handed it to Ning Shu. Ning Shu smiled. Thank you, Taoist priest. Ning Shu returned to Pepper Hall. He poured out a pill and placed it at the tip of his nose for a sniff. The pill was scarlet red and mixed with gold. There should be cinnabar. Could the gold be gold powder? Ning Shu was speechless. It smelled like pine. It should be pine branches that had been burned to ashes. Did he really put all sorts of things together? Your Highness, do you want to eat this thing? Shi, who was at the side, saw Ning Shu playing with the pill in his hand. Your Highness, this thing can kill people. See, even Shi, knew this. Everyone knew that drugs weren't good, but once you ate it, you couldn't quit. A moment of joy was also good. This humble Taoist priest doesn't want to eat it. Ning Shu put the pill into the teacup. The pill was dizzy and its color was black and red. Ning Shu poured the pill from the bottle into the teacup and put the bottle away. Go and pour it out. Soaking in water, the smell of the pill became stronger and more pungent. Shi took the teacup away. A palace maid hurried in. Ning Shu bowed and said, Your Highness, something happened to concubine Xian. Something happened to the two children. Ning Shu rubbed his head. It had only been a few days and something had indeed happened. Ning Shu rushed to concubine Xian's palace and heard concubine Xian's cries the moment he entered the palace. Ning Shu stepped over the threshold and walked into the room. The imperial physician was taking the pulse of the two children. The two children were lying side by side on the bed. Their faces were red and they were motionless. Concubine Xian stayed by the bed. She was out of her wits and couldn't stop wiping her tears. Just read a refreshing novel. Chapter 1911. Falling in Love with You, Transmigrating Canon Fodder Female Supporting Character Counterattack. Ning Shu walked over and asked, How are the children? The imperial physician hurriedly stood up. Ning Shu cupped his hands, Your Highness, the children are just suffering from the cold. They are fine. Suffering from the cold? They thought they were poisoned. However, it was the beginning of spring and the weather was still very cold. How could the children be suffering from the cold? However, there was a big problem now. If the children's fever did not go down, they might not be able to survive. If the fever continued, they might turn into fools. Your Highness, what should we do? What should we do? My children. Imperial concubine Xian's face was pale. She probably had not recovered her energy. Imperial concubine Xian was out of her wits. When she saw Ning Shu, she subconsciously relied on Ning Shu. When she was pregnant, it was Ning Shu who took care of her. When she was in confinement, it was also Ning Shu who took care of the children. Nothing happened until now. She had only taken care of the children for a few days and was already exhausted. Now that something happened, Imperial concubine Xian's heart was pounding. It was as if she was being tortured in a pot of oil. Imperial concubine Xian's tears were like a tap. She was extremely tired. Imperial physician, quickly prescribe medicine. Take off the children's clothes and use water to wipe their bodies. What are you all standing there for? Hurry up. Ning Shu said to the palace maids who were in a daze. Ning Shu asked the female physician and the maid who knew martial arts, How do you take care of the children? The female physician looked at the crying Imperial concubine Xian and said softly, Imperial concubine Xian usually takes care of the children personally. Ning Shu understood. Imperial concubine Xian did not trust her people and sent them away. The two children were wearing a lot of clothes. If they were to catch a cold, it would only be at night. Ning Shu touched the blanket on the crib. The blanket was very beautiful and had beautiful patterns embroidered on it. Ning Shu pressed on the blanket. The inside of the blanket was very fluffy. When he pressed on it, it formed a thin layer. It did not seem to have much weight. Ning Shu looked back and forth at the thin blanket. Scissors. She brought a pair of scissors from the house, and Ning Shu cut open the quilt. Inside the quilt was not snow-white cotton, but rather some old, blackened cotton and cottonseeds. The imperial physician prescribed medicine. Ning Shu asked the female physician to boil the medicine. Ning Shu touched the two children and injected some spiritual energy into their bodies. The two children furrowed their brows in pain and whimpered in pain. My son, my son. Imperial concubine Xian leaned on the bed and cried uncontrollably. Ning Shu was annoyed when he heard that. Stop crying. Younger sister, you should rest for a while. Crying here will affect the imperial physician, palace maid Ning Shu said. Help your imperial concubine to rest. Imperial concubine Xian was supported by palace maids, and the sharp voice of an eunuch sounded from outside the hall, the emperor has arrived. Imperial concubine Xian immediately cried and shouted to Ao Tianzi, who walked into the room, Your Majesty, save our children, Your Majesty. Ao Tianzi said coldly, Why did something happen again? What are you doing as a mother? Imperial concubine Xian was stunned for a moment, and then cried out with grievance, This concubine has been taking care of the children all this time. I don't even wear clothes. Your Majesty, you have to believe this concubine. Ao Tianzi looked at the children whose faces were red from the fever, and then looked at Ning Shu. What are you doing as the empress? If something happens to the two children, I will hold you responsible. Why are there so few children in my harem? What? In the end, he just wants to put the blame on me. Ning Shu bowed. Your Majesty, don't worry. The two children will definitely be fine. That better be the case. Ao Tianzi did not even look at the babies on the bed and turned to leave. Imperial concubine Xian was dumbstruck. She staggered and sat down on the chair. She covered her mouth and cried. Why is the emperor so cold and heartless? Does he not care about the two children at all? They are the eldest son and eldest daughter. They are the children that Ao Tianzi will be a father for the first time. Why is it like this? The female doctor slowly fed the boiled medicine to the children. Ning Shu sat on the chair next to Imperial concubine Xian, picked up the teacup and took a sip. Then, he said, Do you know why the emperor has such an attitude? Imperial concubine Xian's neck stiffened. She turned her head and looked at Ning Shu. Her eyes were confused and innocent. She really did not know why it was like this. Ning Shu said indifferently, Then do you know who the emperor likes the most in the harem? It's Min Jiaoyi. Imperial concubine Xian thought about it. It was not that he doted on Min Jiaoyi. At most, every time he had sex with Min Jiaoyi, Ao Tianzi would stay the night. The other concubines would leave after sex. Moreover, the emperor would leave in the dark. Yes, it's Min Jiaoyi. Do you know how much he dotes on her? Ning Shu said with a smile. Only Min Jiaoyi's children are the emperor's children. Imperial concubine Xian shivered. She vaguely understood something, but she still did not understand. She asked, Is it really like this? Do you know why the children in the harem are always miscarried? They are always miscarried for various reasons. Do you know the reason? Do you know why I tried so hard to protect your children? Imperial concubine Xian was stunned by Ning Shu's words. Her face was filled with shock and her voice trembled. No, it can't be like this. It is what you think. The emperor does not want children to be born in the harem. Other than Fu Min's children, the things the emperor gave you before were all for abortion. It is my responsibility as the empress to have no children in the harem. Ning Shu stared at imperial concubine Xian. This is not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing. Imperial concubine Xian was stunned by the huge amount of information in Ning Shu's words. The emperor actually wanted to kill her children. Which family didn't want to have a prosperous family? The emperor actually wanted to kill her children. Qinxia doesn't believe it. It's not like this. Imperial concubine Xian couldn't accept it. Why would the emperor do this? Because of love. Love is unique. Ning Shu had a smile on his lips. What the emperor wants to do the most is to disperse the harem for Fu Min. Disperse the harem? Imperial concubine Xian's expression looked like she was laughing and crying at the same time. Empress, you must be joking. How can there be such a thing? There has never been such a thing in the past. The court will not allow such a thing to happen. In the future, when the power is highly centralized and the emperor can decide life and death with one word, when the court is the emperor's alone, do you think such a thing won't happen? Imperial concubine Xian asked, what is it for? Because of love. Imperial concubine Xian was dumbstruck. It's for Min Jiaoyi. What right does Min Jiaoyi have for the emperor to do this for her? Why? We are all the emperor's women. We are all the emperor's women, but it doesn't mean that the emperor loves everyone. Ning Shu was incomparably calm. I'm telling you this because I want you to take good care of the children. The children are what you can rely on. Just read a novel. Chapter 1912. Falling in love with you, transmigrating canon fodder female supporting character counterattack. Ning Shu hadn't told consort Xian that this child wasn't Ao Tianzi's. Otherwise, consort Xian would go even crazier. Consort Xian twisted her handkerchief. No wonder His Majesty is so cold to Qinxia and the child. It's all because of Min Jiaoyi. Ning Shu, this has nothing to do with Min Jiaoyi. How can it have nothing to do with her? If Min Jiaoyi hadn't seduced the mistress, His Majesty wouldn't have done this. If it wasn't for Min Jiaoyi, His Majesty wouldn't have treated Qinxia's child so coldly. Esteemed Empress, why are you still speaking up for Min Jiaoyi? Consort Xian's voice was a bit shrill, as if she was directing all her hatred towards Fu Min. If His Majesty dotes on you so much, will you be happy? Ning Shu said indifferently. In this harem, thunder and rain are the emperor's grace. Who can say no? Min Jiaoyi is favored, how can she say no? But. Consort Xian gritted her teeth and twisted her handkerchief. Then whose fault is this? Does Qinxia deserve all this? You're not the only one who has suffered all this. This consort has always been regarded as an unqualified empress. You've already given birth to 2 children. Think of the children that were aborted before, Ning Shu said indifferently. If consort Xian was receiving the same treatment as Fu Min, she would definitely be overjoyed. In this harem, no one had a choice. Their fate depended on someone else's words. In this harem, there was no winning or losing. The loser was -1, and the winner was -1. In the end, it was still 0. The winner was the emperor who looked down on the harem. Consort Xian was so angry that she panted heavily. Qinxia can't accept this, Qinxia can't accept this. What's there to be unhappy about? You have 2 children and you still want the supreme honor and favor. It's not good to be too greedy. Raise the 2 children well. Even if something happens in the future, you still have the 2 children to rely on. Ning Shu really wanted to roll his eyes. Don't forget that your 2 children are still lying in bed. We don't know if they're dead or alive. If you have the time to hate Min Jiaoyi, you should take good care of your children. In the end, it was all because of that cucumber, Ao Tianzi. By the time Ao Tianzi burped, the harem would be in harmony. They would gather together to play mahjong, leaf cards, or concubines. The man was already dead, what was there to fight for? What was there to fight for? Your Highness, what should I do? If anything happens to the two children, it's the same as taking my life. I don't want anything, I just want the two children. Concubine Xian cried uncontrollably. I don't know if it's safe in your palace. Bring the child to this consort's pepper hall and bring him back when he's better, Ning Shu said. This. Imperial concubine Xian was a little hesitant. Now she finally understood how difficult it was to give birth to two children. She might not even have children in the future. If Fu Min did not give birth to a child, her child might inherit the throne. If she went to the Empress Palace now, what would she do if she couldn't get the child back? Imperial concubine Xian was not stupid to stay in the palace. The Empress had told her so many things, she was pretty much on the same boat as the Empress. Imperial concubine Xian could not bear to give away the child that she had painstakingly given birth to. The child is still sick, it's not good to move him like this. Moreover, your Highness is precious. If the child passes the illness to your Highness, it won't be good. Imperial concubine Xian tactfully rejected Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded. All right then. Take good care of the child. The child can't take it anymore. Female doctors can be trusted. Things like brewing medicine have to be trusted. To tell you the truth, this kind of thing is not rare. You have to be careful in the future. If our conversation today reaches the Emperor's ears, both you and I will not be able to live. Moreover, the two children will not be able to live either. I have the Tan family behind me, so I can survive for a while. However, I don't know if your family will give up on you, Ning Shu said calmly. Imperial concubine Xian's face turned green and white. I know. I won't speak carelessly. And, I'm leaving. After Ning Shu left, Imperial concubine Xian stood up with the support of the chair. Ning Shu bowed. I respectfully send your Highness off. Your Highness, Imperial concubine Xian finally gave birth to the child after much difficulty. Now, something has happened. If something happens to the two children, the Emperor will reprimand you again. She, was very melancholy. The children in the imperial harem had to face so many disasters. In order to enjoy glory and wealth, the prerequisite was that you had to survive. To be able to avoid all kinds of schemes, be able to give birth safely and successfully grow up was simply a miracle of life. Ning Shu sighed slightly. Ao Tianzi's imperial harem was really exceptionally difficult. It was fine if the emperor was heartless, but an affectionate emperor was really unbearable. There were all kinds of restrictions in the imperial court, and he had to protect his chastity. The emperor felt that he had been wronged several times. We just want to be together with the person we love. Why did the heavens give us so many women? Fuck those women. In short, everyone had their own difficulties. Ning Shu returned to Pepper Palace Hall and ate and slept well. In the past few days, Ning Shu had been sending to check on the children. The children had a fever repeatedly. The temperature would drop, but not long after, the fever would rise again. Ning Shu sighed. If Imperial concubine Xian, as the mother, didn't allow others to interfere, she really would have interfered. The children were able to survive until now mostly because of Ning Shu's spiritual energy. There was definitely a problem with the repeated treatment. It all depended on when Imperial concubine Xian would make a decision. Ning Shu took out an empty pill bottle and then used rouge to make her face a little red. She then dripped some water into her eyes, making them slightly red. Ning Shu went to the old Daoist's palace and found the old Daoist. Daoist, I've finished all the pills you gave me. Do you still have any? The old Daoist was stunned. You finished all the pills I gave you so quickly. Yes, 3 times a day, once in the morning, noon, and night. After eating this, I feel that my muddled mind has become much clearer and more energetic. If I don't eat it for a day, I'll feel like I'm in debt. The old Taoist was speechless. Was she eating pills as if they were rice? Seeing Ning Shu's eyes turn red, the old Taoist couldn't help but be speechless. Previously, she had advised the emperor not to eat his pills. Now, she was eating them more fiercely than anyone else. Imperial concubine, you don't need to eat them so frequently. When you're tired or sleepy, you can eat one. The old Taoist said. Don't treat them like candy. Oh. Ning Shu's face was slightly red. Isn't this for nourishing my body? I just want to nourish my body. The old Taoist almost instantly understood. She probably wanted to rely on pills to nourish her body and give birth to a child. Ning Shu said, Taoist priest, do you have an enhanced version? That is, one with better effects and a heavier amount. I want to recuperate my body as soon as possible. No, the golden core is like this. The old Taoist's mouth twitched. Just read a refreshing novel. Chapter 1913. Falling in love with you, transmigrating canon fodder female supporting character counterattack, nope. Ning Shu was very disappointed. The imperial physician said that I shouldn't rely on pills to recuperate, but I think pills are very good, so I want them to be more effective. There are many ways to treat illnesses in this world. The imperial physician only uses herbs to treat people, but this humble Taoist uses immortal items, said the old Taoist. Ning Shu agreed wholeheartedly. You're right. Do you have any pills? This humble Taoist refined some not long ago. Golden pills are hard to come by, Your Majesty, so you should eat them sparingly. He didn't care about things that were easy to come by, but he cared about things that were hard to come by. The old Taoist wanted to make his products into high-end products that people couldn't get their hands on. I'll give you 3 pills and give the other 5 to His Majesty. Refining pills isn't easy. Every time this humble Taoist refines a pill, a lot of this humble Taoist's cultivation will be depleted. Oh, I see. But 3 pills is enough for me to eat for a day. Ning Shu was a little unhappy. Can you increase the dosage so that 1 pill can last me a day? The old Taoist was speechless. Immortal items can't be changed just because you want to. Your Majesty, please don't be rude to immortal items. Ning Shu was a little unhappy, and her eyes turned even redder. Then I might as well drink pills. The old Taoist was speechless. What's the Empress doing here? Ao Tianzi walked into the hall and sized up Ning Shu and the old Taoist with a meaningful look. Ning Shu saw Ao Tianzi's suspicious look. Instantly, countless black lines appeared on Ning Shu's forehead, and the corners of her mouth twitched. What's with Ao Tianzi's look? Is he suspecting that there's something going on between me and this old Taoist? Ao Tianzi was getting delusional from being cuckolded. This humble Taoist greets His Majesty. The Empress is here to ask for pills. Elixirs. Ao Tianzi looked at Ning Shu. The Empress also takes elixirs. Your Majesty, we are husband and wife. After eating it for a few days, I feel that it's not bad, so I came to ask for more from the Taoist priest. It's just that it's not easy to get medicinal pills, so I still want to ask for more. Ning Shu said in a dignified manner. We are now poison buddies. Ao Tianzi looked at Ning Shu and asked, the Empress is still in the mood to ask for pills. How is the child? Ning Shu immediately curled her lips and said with grievance, Qinxia has a headache. It's very painful when Qinxia is in pain, so she can't care about other things. After eating Taoist priest's pill, Qinxia doesn't feel so painful anymore. How is the child? Ao Tianzi took the pills from the old Taoist. There were fewer pills in the box than usual. Why are there fewer pills? I gave a portion of it to the Empress. The old Taoist was pleased to see the noblest person in the world fighting to eat the pills. Then I'll give Qinxie's portion to your Majesty. Ning Shu reluctantly took out her own pills. Your Majesty, please eat more. Qinxie will ask Taoist priest for more next time. Qinxie will take her leave. Ning Shu left in disappointment. Ao Tianzi looked at Ning Shu's back and said to the old Taoist priest, next time the Empress comes to ask for more, there's no need to give it to her. It's an immortal's item. Every bit used is a bit less. This humble Taoist understands. The old Taoist priest said indifferently. He was neither servile nor overbearing, looking like an immortal. It was good to have someone fighting over something. It was delicious to have someone fighting over it. Ao Tianzi felt even more uncomfortable when he saw the Empress fighting over his pills. These were his things. Ning Shu returned to Pepper Hall. A palace maid came to report that Consort Xian had brought the 2 children to Pepper Hall. Your Majesty, please save Qinxie's children. Consort Xian knelt on the ground and sobbed. Ning Shu took the children. The children's faces were already very sharp and their breathing was weak. Ning Shu touched the children's heads and found that they were running a low fever. Ning Shu quickly placed the children on the bed and said to Consort Xian, who was crying uncontrollably, go wash your face. In just a few days, Consort Xian had lost a lot of weight. She was also extremely haggard. Her face was sallow and she didn't wear any makeup. She didn't look like a graceful and luxurious imperial concubine at all. The 2 children had been running a fever for the past few days. They were even lighter than when they were born. When their clothes were unbuttoned, their chest bones protruded out. It was a shocking sight. Ning Shu transferred some spiritual energy into the 2 children and had the female doctor and she boil medicine. When there was no one in the palace, Ning Shu took out the fever pills and ground them into a fine powder. He put the powder into a spoon and mixed it with some water to feed the 2 children. Ning Shu was worried sick about the 2 children. He was even more worried about them than their own mother. He used a handkerchief to wipe the 2 children's bodies. Those who survived a great disaster were bound to have good fortune in the future. With Ning Shu taking care of the 2 children, Consort Xian could finally rest and sleep. After enduring for a few days, Consort Xian couldn't take it anymore. In addition, she had just finished her confinement and her body had reached its limit. Consort Xian was afraid of Ning Shu, but she had to rely on Ning Shu. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to Ning Shu with the children. Ning Shu stayed by the bed for the whole night. The temperature of the children's bodies dropped a little. The children's expressions were also less painful. With more careful care, the 2 children didn't have a recurring fever anymore. They could even open their eyes occasionally. Consort Xian heaved a sigh of relief. The children were finally fine. When the imperial concubines in the harem found out that the 2 children were fine, they all had complicated feelings. When they saw that Consort Xian had children, they were all envious and jealous. Of course, this included Fu Min. Fu Min really wanted a child, but every time Ao Tianzi slept with her, he would give her medicine to eat. She also secretly asked the imperial physician what kind of medicine was in it. The imperial physician said that it was medicine to nourish the body. Of course, it also had contraceptive effects. This medicine was given by Ao Tianzi, which made Fu Min feel very disappointed and upset. One night, she said to Ao Tianzi, Your Majesty, Qinxie wants a child. When I wait for your Majesty every day, Qinxie wants a child to accompany Qinxie. When Fu Min said this, she was already prepared to face Ao Tianzi's anger. Unexpectedly, Ao Tianzi readily said, All right, give birth to a child that belongs to us. Really? Fu Min was pleasantly surprised. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your kindness. We will give you what you want. Ao Tianzi kissed Fu Min's forehead. Ao Tianzi thought that since there were already 2 children in the harem, and the 2 children's bodies seemed to be getting better, even if Fu Min was pregnant now, it wasn't a big deal in the harem. Moreover, with his protection, Fu Min would definitely be able to give birth to the child smoothly. Those 2 children were really lucky. No matter how they died, they wouldn't die. He would just let these 2 children be the shields for Fu Min's child. When the time came, he could casually find a reason to kill the children. Ao Tianzi ate a pill and hugged Fu Min affectionately. He should give Fu Min a child. Otherwise, Fu Min would be too lonely. He couldn't dote on Fu Min too much, lest it attract the criticism of the court officials. Moreover, Fu Min's father was only a minor official. If he doted on Fu Min too much, Fu Min's father might be unlucky. Therefore, Fu Min's favor couldn't be compared to the lack, but it was more than enough. Just read a refreshing novel. Chapter 1914. Ao Tianzi and Fu Min started to make babies. Ao Tianzi also stopped giving Fu Min contraceptive soup. However, because of this, Ao Tianzi ate a lot of elixirs because he could only work harder by consuming elixirs. Ao Tianzi sometimes felt a dull pain, especially when he was about to release. It was so painful that Ao Tianzi gasped. Fortunately, Fu Min's period was delayed after a period of time. It was very likely that she was pregnant. After a period of time, the imperial physician took her pulse. There was already a pulse. She was pregnant. Ning Shu was holding a rattledrum and playing with the child when she walked into the hall. She bowed to Ning Shu and said, "Nyang Nyang, Min Jiaoyi Nyang Nyang is pregnant. The emperor is very happy and has bestowed many things to the palace servants." Ning Shu's expression didn't change. He put down the rattledrum and said, "She's pregnant. Has it been confirmed?" "The imperial physician has confirmed it." "Your Highness, now that Min Jiaoyi is pregnant, what should I do about my child?" Concubine Xian wrung her handkerchief worriedly. "The emperor doesn't care about your child," Ning Shu said casually. "Concubine Xian, so heartbreaking, Min Jiaoyi is pregnant. Her child will be endlessly favored. What about my child? My child will also be the son of the emperor." Concubine Xian rubbed her forehead. She was very tired. In this harem, she was treading on thin ice. Any wind would make her heart jump. Min Jiaoyi's pregnancy made Concubine Xian feel very uncomfortable. It was normal for her to feel indignant. Ning Shu held the baby's hand and touched the baby's skin. He heard that touching the baby's skin more often would make the baby smarter. "Hasn't she always been endlessly favored?" Ning Shu said casually. "Your Highness." Concubine Xian was about to cry. "You are the master of the harem. You and the emperor are married. The emperor doesn't care about you and treats Fu Min as the love of his life. What right does Fu Min have? She was born in a small family and her father is just a small official. There is no such thing as love. You should take care of the baby now." Ning Shu shook the rattledrum. His heart didn't waver. This was the feeling of not loving. He didn't care and didn't care. "Nyang Nyang, if Fu Min's child inherits the throne in the future, will we still be able to survive?" Now that she had a child, Concubine Xian had to think more about her child. It was also because of her sense of crisis. For the sake of her own life, what was she so eager to do? "You're only pregnant now. Why are you so flustered?" Ning Shu put down the rattledrum and looked at Imperial Concubine Xian. Imperial Concubine Xian was so skinny that her chin was sharp like a snake spirit. Right now, Imperial Concubine Xian was under immense mental pressure. Ning Shu reckoned that Concubine Xian was suffering from postpartum depression. Fortunately, the child she gave birth to was not liked by the child's father. Now that the woman Ao Tianzi liked was pregnant, concubine Xian's heart felt like it was being fried in a pan of oil. The worry and pressure made concubine Xian very uncomfortable. Ning Shu sighed. The women living here were really fucking miserable. For the sake of their families, once they fell out of favor, the harem would worship the strong and trample on the weak. At that time, their lives would be even worse than those in the palace, and they would have no choice but to fight for it. Right now, you're only pregnant. We don't even know if it's a boy or a girl. You should take care of your body. Don't be so worried. Ning Shu looked at concubine Xian's chin and felt his heart itching. It was too sharp and made him feel uncomfortable. Empress, I'm so worried. Concubine Xian's tears fell again as she spoke. She took out a handkerchief to wipe her tears and felt like she couldn't stop crying. She was indeed suffering from postpartum depression. Ning Shu said to the female doctor, prepare some nourishing things for concubine Xian. Concubine Xian is worrying too much. Concubine Xian sighed. Ever since she gave birth to the child, the emperor had never visited her again. After giving birth to the child, he didn't reward her at all. There were many rumors in the harem. Every time concubine Xian heard about it, she would get angry. She even punished the palace servants in her palace. It was because of the rumors. Concubine Xian really couldn't understand why the emperor didn't give her any face at all. He didn't even reward her with anything. She didn't do anything to anger the emperor, so why did the emperor treat her like this? As long as concubine Xian thought about it, she felt terrible and couldn't help but want to cry. Ning Shu looked at the crying concubine Xian and didn't know how to comfort her. If a person wanted to live well, it was better to be ruthless. If she asked for too much, she would end up living a bad life. Ning Shu looked at concubine Xian silently. She asked in a small voice, Empress, do we need to send some things to Min Jiaoyi? After all, Min Jiaoyi is pregnant. She wanted to reward Min Jiaoyi with something. Ning Shu said indifferently, Min Jiaoyi doesn't have anything she wants. There's no need to send it. If something were to happen, Ao Tianzi might get angry and kill the entire harem. She frowned. Empress, is this okay? Empress is the empress. Rather than trying to gain a reputation for being magnanimous and not being able to get rid of it when the time came, it was better to do nothing now. Ao Tianzi couldn't find a reason. Since Min Jiaoyi is pregnant, Ben Gong should go see her. Ning Shu stood up. Help Ben Gong dress. Ning Shu arrived at Fu Min's palace. Although she was pregnant, Fu Min still bowed deeply. Ning Shu supported Fu Min, you're already pregnant. There's no need for such formalities. Many thanks for Empress's grace, but this concubine cannot be disrespectful to Empress, Fu Min said reservedly. Ben Gong likes that you're tactful. No wonder His Majesty likes you so much. Sit down, don't stand, Ning Shu said with a smile. Concubine Xian looked at Fu Min and the decorations in the room. Her heart was sour. Her palace was good. Moreover, she was a concubine, while Fu Min was just a Jiaoyi. Ning Shu looked at Fu Min. Because she was pregnant, Fu Min didn't wear any makeup. However, she was still a rare beauty without makeup. She appeared even more gentle and moving. However, her face was a bit pale. Since you're pregnant, you don't have to come to Pepper Palace to pay your respects in the future. Ben Gong won't give you anything. When you successfully give birth to children, Ben Gong will reward you. There are so many people in the palace. You have to pay attention to what you eat and wear. There are so many people in the harem. Be careful, Ning Shu instructed Fu Min. Hearing Ning Shu's words, Fu Min said gratefully, many thanks, Empress. This concubine will definitely be careful. Ning Shu made a sound of acknowledgement. Then Ben Gong will be leaving. No need to see me out. After leaving the palace, concubine Xian twisted her handkerchief and said to Ning Shu, Nyang Nyang, Min Zhaoyi's palace is even more luxurious than this concubine's. It exceeds the standards and breaks the rules. Rules, His Majesty is the rule. Don't take these things to heart, Ning Shu said unconcernedly. It was better to go back and take care of the two babies. As for the child in Fu Min's stomach, he would think about it after Fu Min was born. I wonder what His Majesty has been busy with recently. How is his body? Ning Shu couldn't help but sigh. Poison friend, how many pills have you eaten? This book came from XHTML. Chapter 1915. Imperial concubine Xian stewed a bowl of tonic soup and used it as an excuse to meet the emperor. Imperial concubine Xian had not seen Ao Tianzi for a long time. Please search for the most complete version. The fastest novel, however, after the medicine was sent into the hall, she came out with an empty bowl. She didn't see Ao Tianzi at all. Then, the chamberlain found an excuse to ask concubine Xian to leave. The moment concubine Xian returned, she cried so much that Ning Shu's heart went numb. Right now, imperial concubine Xian only wanted a little bit of care from her husband. However, her husband's heart was as hard as stone. When imperial concubine Xian was asleep, Ning Shu had injected her with needles. Imperial concubine Xian's qi and blood had stagnated. Concubine Xian didn't sleep well and her hair fell off the pillow. Ning Shu fiddled with her hair. There were quite a few strands, and if concubine Xian didn't take good care of her hair, she might suffer from postpartum hair loss. If that happened, she would lose a lot of hair, and concubine Xian would go crazy. Ning Shu pricked concubine Xian's acupoints and put away the silver needles. She had done everything she could. If concubine Xian couldn't get over this hurdle, there was nothing she could do even if she blamed herself. The pain of childbirth, the deprivation of a woman's vitality, the destruction of a woman's body, the physical and psychological pain was incomprehensible to men. Imperial concubine Xian stayed in Ning Shu's pepper house. Her excuse was to take care of the child. Now that the child was better, imperial concubine Xian didn't seem to want to take the child back. It seemed that concubine Xian had other plans. After all, Ning Shu was the empress, the legal wife, and the child was the legitimate son. Ning Shu returned to his inner palace. The two children were sleeping. Their faces were thin, and it was not easy to raise them to be white and plump. She rocked the crib. When she saw Ning Shu, she stood up. Your Highness, the little prince and princess are asleep. You should rest early. You must be tired from taking care of the children. Ning Shu looked at the baby in the crib and nodded. The next morning, concubine Xian came to pay her respects to Ning Shu. However, her complexion was not very good. She looked a little absent-minded, as if she had not woken up yet. Ning Shu took a sip of tea. Consort Xian didn't sleep well. I'm fine, I'm just a little dizzy. Concubine Xian rubbed her temples. Find an imperial physician to prescribe some blood-nourishing medicine. Your body hasn't fully recovered after giving birth, so you should take care of yourself, Ning Shu said. Thank you, Empress, for your concern. Empress. Concubine Xian bit her lip and hesitated for a moment. If you have something to say, just say it. Ning Shu put down his teacup. Your Highness, this concubine wants to let the child grow up under your care. When concubine Xian said this, her eyes were filled with tears. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows slightly. He wanted the child to have the status of a legitimate son. Ning Shu smiled and said, I am the official mother of the children. All the children in the harem are my children. Since that's the case, let the two children stay by my side. Of course, you are the birth mother of the children and can see them at any time. You can also stay in my Pepper Hall Palace. I can't take care of the two children, so you should stay by their side. Thank you, Your Highness, for your grace." Concubine Xian immediately knelt down helplessly. Only the Empress could save her now. Moreover, the Empress didn't have any children. Her child would be under the Empress's care and would have the status of a legitimate son. In the future, he might even inherit the throne. Concubine Xian had knelt on the ground for a long time and felt dizzy. She almost couldn't kneel anymore. Ning Shu said, "Get up. Don't kneel anymore. Your body needs to rest. You've been kneeling for a while and your face is pale." "Thank you, Your Highness." Concubine Xian stood up with the help of the palace maids. She was a little out of breath. Ning Shu frowned and said, "What exactly are you keeping in your heart? No one will feel sorry for you if you ruin your body like this." "I'm fine. I just feel flustered and short of breath. My body feels weak and weak." Concubine Xian said, "It's a psychological problem." Ning Shu, Ao Tianzi was a magical pill. He couldn't be bothered to say more. Ning Shu finished his breakfast and watched the nanny feed the two children. Concubine Xian looked at the two children kindly. Only when she looked at the two children could Concubine Xian calm down. Ning Shu had children and everything was fine. He didn't leave the house every day. The concubines in the imperial harem didn't come to greet him either. Everyone did their own thing. Ao Tianzi rarely came to the imperial harem. Even if he did, he would go to Fu Min's palace and then leave. On the 1st and 15th day of every month, according to the rules, those who should come to Ning Shu's palace didn't come. Moreover, there were two children in Ning Shu's palace. Ao Tianzi came to Ning Shu's palace because he wanted to be abused. Anyway, the rules in the palace were very loose and the atmosphere was very strange. Everyone was guarding their own palace. Why not visit? There were also concubines who sent things to Fu Min's palace. Ning Shu held his forehead. If something happened to Fu Min, these concubines might be in trouble too. If they still had ulterior motives, they would end up badly. The hearts of the imperial harem were too complicated. Ning Shu couldn't say much. What surprised Ning Shu was that it had been surprisingly peaceful recently. There were no assassinations. Could it be that Ao Tianzi had given up on killing the two children? Or was it to distract others? No matter what Ao Tianzi thought, it gave Ning Shu a chance to breathe and gave the children a chance to grow. "How is Min Jiaoyi?" Ning Shu asked her. "Nyang Nyang, the imperial physician will take Min Jiaoyi's pulse regularly," her said. "This servant doesn't know how Min Jiaoyi is now. Min Jiaoyi nurtured the fetus in her palace every day. She didn't see anyone and didn't have any contact with the women in the imperial harem. Although Fu Min didn't cause trouble, she wasn't a fool." "What did the imperial physician say?" Ning Shu asked. "This servant doesn't know. The one who takes Min Jiaoyi's pulse daily isn't an ordinary imperial physician from the imperial hospital, but an imperial physician," her said softly. This servant didn't find out any useful information. Ao Tianzi was really attentive. The imperial physician was the emperor's personal imperial physician. It seemed that he was afraid that the imperial physician from the imperial hospital would do something to Fu Min if he took the pulse of a concubine in the imperial harem. He really protected Fu Min so tightly that nothing could leak out. Ning Shu stroked his temples and smiled slightly without speaking. Consort Xian didn't bother to speak. Everyone was infuriating. Sometimes, it was easier to feel jealous. Consort Xian rubbed her forehead. Her body was very uncomfortable. Ning Shu no longer paid attention to Fu Min's matter. He transferred some spiritual energy into the two children's bodies. The two children had already recovered their energy. They opened their mouths and babbled, reaching out their hands to take things. The children were almost 3 months old. They were white and tender. When their eyes moved, they looked very cute. However, when they made a fuss, they were very annoying. When one cried, the other would also howl. Like a competition, the cries were louder than the ones before. The cries traveled very far. It was simply a demonic sound that penetrated one's brain. It was very distracting. Ning Shu was speechless. Children were really maddening existences. However, she seemed to have an unbreakable fate with them. When they cried, no matter how many people there were, they couldn't coax them. Ning Shu could only silently recite the clear mind incantation to calm the children down. This book came from XHTML. Chapter 1916. If Ao Tianzi was annoyed by their crying, he might kill them in a fit of frustration. Please search for the most complete version. The fastest novelet was not his child who was crying in his territory. Who knew how angry he would be? Every time the child threw a tantrum, only Ning Shu could pacify him. Concubine Xian was both gratified and upset. She was upset that her children were close to others, but she didn't have the energy to take care of the two children. As long as Consort Xian thought of Fu Min who was favored and then thought of her own treatment, it really made her feel indignant and uncomfortable. Imperial concubine Xian rubbed her forehead. When she was combing her hair in the morning, a large amount of hair fell out. This made Imperial concubine Xian very frightened and uncomfortable. She found an imperial physician and took medicine to recuperate. The most important thing for a beauty was to have a head of thick and beautiful hair to be considered a beauty. If her hair was too little, she couldn't comb her hair into a bun. She couldn't even wear a golden hairpin or jade ornament. When concubine Xian drank the medicine, she didn't hesitate at all. If she became bald, she wouldn't have the chance to make a comeback. Ning Shu was feeding the two children some fruit juice. Now that the children were 4 months old, they could start to eat some supplementary food slowly. The two children grinned at Ning Shu. Their eyes were clear and innocent. Nyang nyang, nyang nyang. She hurriedly walked into the store. What's wrong? Ning Shu put the bowl in the palace maid's hand and asked, what happened? Why are you in such a hurry? Nyang nyang, Min Zhao Yi had a miscarriage. She said after catching her breath. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. What's the situation? I heard that the baby's heartbeat has stopped, and the baby is no longer alive. The imperial physician prescribed medicine to remove the blood clot, so that the lifeless baby can be aborted, but Min Zhao refused to take the medicine no matter what. She was a little out of breath when she spoke. Nyang nyang, the emperor is currently in a terrible rage. He said that he wants to investigate thoroughly. Ning Shu frowned. The fetal heartbeat had stopped, and the child had stopped developing. The child was already dead, and the pregnancy had automatically stopped. There was something wrong with Fu Min's child. Ning Shu guessed that there was an average chance that the child would not be born. Even if it was born, it might be a weak and sickly child. Previously, Ao Tianzi's kidney qi had leaked out, and he had been supported by pills. She usually took pills very fiercely, and the pills were filled with heavy metals. Even if she was pregnant, there might be a problem with the child. The smile on Consort Xian's face didn't disappear. She turned her head and wanted to talk to Ning Shu. Seeing that Ning Shu was staring at her, she immediately withdrew her smile and said awkwardly, Nyang nyang, now that something has happened to Min Zhao, will it affect us? If you keep beaming with joy and let the king see, you'll be in trouble. Ning Shu snappily said. Oh. Ao Tianzi was probably fuming right now. If she went over now, she would definitely become his punching bag. Ao Tianzi's heart was throbbing with pain. He might even kill all the women in his harem. I'd better not go. Ning Shu picked up a child and shook a rattledrum to tease the child. Consort Xian looked at Ning Shu carefully and asked, Consort, are we not going to see Min Zhao? You want to go? Go ahead. Ning Shu said nonchalantly. Consort Xian hurriedly shook her head. Empress is joking. Although Consort Xian wanted to see Fu Min's miserable state, she knew that Ao Tianze was furious now. Whoever went would be unlucky. The premise was that they had to follow the Empress. There was some kind of queen of artillery in front of them. The concubines in the inner palace were all paying attention to Ning Shu's Pepper Palace Hall. Clearly, they were waiting for Ning Shu to make a move. Only then would they have a reason to go see Fu Min. No one dared to face Ao Tianze's wrath alone. Fu Min refused to drink the medicine. She hugged her stomach in pain. Her stomach was already a piece of dead meat. Ao Tianze advised Fu Min to drink the medicine. If she didn't take the medicine, some of the things in her stomach would flow out, which would eventually cause harm to her body. However, Fu Min cried and said that her child was fine. She couldn't drink the medicine. Fu Min was already very, very careful. But why couldn't she protect her child? Fu Min was now in endless pain. Fu Min's behavior made Ao Tianze so angry that he was about to explode. However, he couldn't get angry at Fu Min. He was so angry that he flipped the table. Holding back his anger, he persuaded Fu Min to drink the medicine again. Min, we will have children in the future. Listen to me and drink the medicine. Seeing you like this makes me uncomfortable. Fu Min looked at the honorable man with regret and pain. Her eyes were filled with tears. Men don't cry easily. A proud man seemed to be about to cry now. Fu Min's stomach was in pain. Warm blood flowed out. Fu Min's face was pale. In the end, she drank the medicine. Then, she was in so much pain that a lump of bloody flesh flowed out. Ao Tianze looked at the thing in the basin. He could even see the outline of the child. Now, it was dead. Ao Tianze's heart exploded with a vicious aura. He wanted nothing more than to destroy the world. Looking at the unconscious Fu Min on the bed, Ao Tianze clenched his fists. With a flick of his sleeve, he headed towards Ning Shu's Pepper Hall. He needed to vent. If he didn't, he would go crazy. These women in the harem, these vicious women in the harem. Ao Tianze wanted to skin these women alive. His Majesty has arrived. The eunuch's sharp voice sounded outside the palace. Ning Shu hurriedly asked the nanny to take the child away and tidied his clothes. Soon, Ao Tianze entered the palace. Concubine Xian was sitting near the door. When Ao Tianze entered, she quickly bowed. Ao Tianze was filled with anger. His eyes were red. He looked down at Concubine Xian and didn't let her get up. Concubine Xian was half-squatting. Under Ao Tianze's cold aura, her forehead was covered in cold sweat. Her body was shaking. Impudent thing. My child is gone. How dare you wear such beautiful clothes? Ao Tianze roared. He raised his hand and gave Concubine Xian a heavy slap. Concubine Xian didn't react quickly and was slapped to the ground. Half of her face was swollen. However, she couldn't care less about the injury on her face. She knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I'm guilty. Concubine Xian's voice was filled with fear and sobbing. Ao Tianze kicked Concubine Xian. Concubine Xian groaned. Ao Tianze roared, scram. Yes, yes. Concubine Xian got up and walked out of the palace. She staggered out of the palace. She looked terrified. When Ning Shu saw this, he took a step back. Ao Tianze's violence made Ning Shu's heart turn cold. Your Majesty, how is Sister Min Jiaoyi? Ning Shu took 2 steps back and asked. You mean Min Jiaoyi? Her child is gone. Ao Tianze took 2 steps forward. Ning Shu said gloomily, is the Empress happy? This book came from XHTML. Chapter 1917. From Ao Tianzi's expression, Ning Shu knew that if she said anything wrong, concubine Xian's fate would be set in stone. Please search for the most complete version. The fastest novel. Ao Tianzi was here to vent his anger. Evidence. What the hell was that? Ning Shu's expression was sorrowful. She shook her head and said, Your Majesty, I have never thought of it that way. I have no children, so I hope that the younger sisters in the imperial harem can help you have more children. The Empress is really my good Empress. Does the Empress not know about Min Jiaoyi? Ao Tianzi took 2 more steps towards Ning Shu, and Ning Shu took 2 steps back. Ao Tianzi coldly said, Empress, why are you retreating? You must be feeling guilty. Ning Shu was speechless. What does your Majesty want Qinxie to say? Say that Qinxie caused the death of Min Jiaoyi's child. Ning Shu raised her head and looked at Ao Tianzi. Your Majesty, you can investigate this matter thoroughly. If this matter has anything to do with me, I will step down. I don't deserve to be the Empress of this country. You think I don't dare to do anything to you, don't you? Ao Tianzi's expression was ferocious and contained boundless anger, causing people to be intimidated. Ning Shu said, You are the Emperor. You can do anything. But Min Jiaoyi's matter has nothing to do with me. I know you are sad. Ao Tianzi's face twitched as he glared viciously at Ning Shu. He was such a coward, such a coward. An emperor should look down on the people and kneel before him. He should raise his hand and point at the rivers and mountains. He should have 3,000 beauties in his harem. He should be a person of power, wealth, and dignity. But she couldn't even protect her own child. Ao Tianzi clenched his fists under his long sleeves. Looking at Ning Shu's face, he really wanted to slap Ning Shu. How did you manage to be the Empress? The harem has been plagued with problems time and time again. If you don't want to be the Empress, I don't mind replacing you. Ao Tianzi gritted his teeth. It's all because of the Empress' incompetence that so many things have happened in the harem. It's this concubine's incompetence. I'll leave everything to His Majesty. Do you really think that you're scared out of your wits just because you scolded me? If you really want to remove the Empress, why don't you do it? What are you blabbering about? Are you trying to scare me? Ning Shu's submissive attitude did not appease Ao Tianzi. Instead, it made his heart burn with pain, and he had nowhere to vent his anger. The Empress is forbidden from entering Jianfang Palace. Without my permission, she is not allowed to take a step out of the palace. Ao Tianzi flicked his sleeves and left. Ning Shu bowed. Qinxie respectfully sees off Your Majesty. Your Highness. She looked at Ning Shu. What should we do? Min Jiaoyi had a miscarriage and Her Highness was grounded. People who don't know the truth will definitely say that Her Highness caused Min Jiaoyi to have a miscarriage. Ning Shu didn't really care about being grounded. Ning Shu was worried about something else. He was afraid that Ao Tianzi would use this opportunity to clean up his harem. Ning Shu sat on the chair and took a sip of tea. She was very melancholy. Your Highness, this servant doesn't feel too good. It was very bad. A storm was brewing. Ning Shu went to the side chamber to see Consort Xian. Consort Xian was crying on the bed. There was a footprint on her clothes. Your Highness. Consort Xian's personal palace maid bowed to Ning Shu and looked at the crying Consort Xian worriedly. Ning Shu walked over. Are you all right? Your Highness. Consort Xian raised her head. Half of her face was swollen. The 5 fingerprints were all bruised and swollen. It was a stark contrast with the thin face next to her. Ning Shu was shocked. Ning Shu closed his slightly open mouth. Let the imperial physician prescribe some medicine for you. Find an imperial physician for your master. Yes. Your Highness, Qinxie has been wronged. Consort Xian couldn't even speak clearly. Moreover, when she spoke, Half of her face was pulled. It was so painful that Consort Xian's saliva flowed out. Consort Xian looked really pathetic now. I've been grounded too. Therefore, I've been wronged. You've only been beaten. I'm afraid that some people might even lose their lives. Ning Shu sighed. You've been beaten. There's no use crying like this. It was completely useless. Consort Xian hammered her chest. I've been wronged. Everyone in the harem is wronged. Don't cry. If you cry, the children will cry too. The emperor doesn't like the two children. Don't throw yourself into the crossbow at this time. Consort Xian shut her mouth and hiccuped. Her tears flowed down her face. Her hair was messy and stuck to her swollen face. She looked especially pathetic. The palace maid who went to find the imperial physician returned and said pitifully, Your Highness, the palace has been surrounded. We can't leave. Oh, I've been grounded. Ning Shu thought that Ao Tianzi had casually said that she was grounded. He didn't expect that he would arrange for guards to guard the door. Then let the female physician get some medicine for you to rub on. Ning Shu said to Consort Xian. I can't leave here. Go back to your palace. This way, you'll be able to find out about the situation in the harem. I understand. Consort Xian took a deep breath. Ji Xiang, comb my hair. How could she expect this man to dote on her and pamper her? Even if Consort Xian wanted to deceive herself now, she couldn't do it. Consort Xian was blocked. Consort Xian said directly, I'm Consort Xian. Even if I want to return to my palace, I'll be stopped. The emperor only said that you're grounded. He didn't ground me. The guards looked at Consort Xian, whose face was half swollen, and looked at each other. However, Consort Xian still forced her way out. Consort Xian didn't look like she was full of remorse now. She was much more energetic. People had to see reality clearly. Without so much expectation, she could become stronger. Ning Shu looked after the two children and rocked the small bed. Recently, Ning Shu had to take good care of the two children. Fu Min had lost her children. Ao Tianzi might want to kill the two children. If the two children died in her palace, even if Ao Tianzi wanted to depose the empress, the courtiers wouldn't be able to stop him. She was the empress of poison. If she lacked etiquette and didn't set a good example for all the women in the world, she would definitely be deposed. Ning Shu's expression was cold. She had to kill Ao Tianzi quickly. If this continued, she wouldn't be able to keep her position as the empress. Even if Ao Tianzi was a soft man now and was taking good pills, he was only in his 20s. His body was strong, so it was impossible for him to die in a short time. She couldn't endure Ao Tianzi. At night, Ning Shu asked a servant girl who knew martial arts to guard the bed. Ning Shu placed the two children on the bed and stayed with Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't sleep. She released her mental strength to cover the entire palace. Only when someone came, she would be able to sense it. In the middle of the night, the entire palace was quiet. A secret guard in black entered Ning Shu's palace with his head covered. Ning Shu opened her eyes in the dark. The harem was really Ao Tianzi's fish pond. The concubines in the harem were all fish on the chopping board, killing each other. The women in the harem couldn't fight back at all. This book came from XHTML. Chapter 1918. Ning Shu held his breath and listened to the subtle footsteps of the shadow guards. Under the surveillance of his spiritual power, Ning Shu could clearly see the movements of the shadow guards. The shadow guards directly stabbed their swords into the two small beds, but they missed. They looked at the big bed and slowly moved to it. They wanted to kill the people on the bed, no matter if they were adults or villains. They could say that there was an assassin in the harem. Anyway, they would be dead anyway. Ning Shu sprinkled a handful of powder on the 3 shadow guards. The maid who knew martial arts immediately jumped out and fought with the 3 shadow guards who had lime in their eyes. "There's an assassin. Catch the assassin!" Ning Shu shouted loudly, breaking the silence deep in the palace. The guard guarding the door frowned and rushed in. He said at the door, "Your Majesty." I rushed in. Then the guard began to knock on the door. The maid fought with the 3 shadow guards. Because Ning Shu sprinkled lime before, the shadow guard's eyes hurt and kept crying. It was not impossible for the maid to deal with the 3 shadow guards. Besides, Ning Shu's fine needles assisted. The 3 shadow guards in black knew that something was wrong and wanted to retreat. Ning Shu hurriedly said, "Catch one." The maid hurriedly stopped one. Ning Shu injected a fine needle into the shadow guard's knee. The shadow guard's knee hurt and immediately knelt down. He was restrained by the maid. The guard came in and saw the shadow guard being controlled. The shadow guard bit the poison sac in his mouth and immediately died. His body softened and fell to the ground. The maid looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu held the child in horror and said to the guard, "Go and report to the emperor that there's an assassin in the palace. Go quickly." "Yes." A guard went to report to Ao Tianzi. The others stayed in the room and waited. Ning Shu coaxed the crying child. He lowered his head and looked cold. Not long after, footsteps sounded outside the room. Ao Tianzi entered the room and saw the man in black lying on the ground. He frowned. Were the shadow guards so useless? He couldn't even kill women and children. "Your Majesty, I almost didn't get to see Your Majesty." Ning Shu stumbled and fell to her knees in front of Ao Tianzi. "Your Majesty." Ning Shu's voice was very sharp, piercing Ao Tianzi's eardrums. "What's going on?" Ao Tianzi frowned and asked, "Your Majesty, what's the matter with this man in black?" Ao Tianzi was really pretending to be innocent. Ning Shu immediately sobbed and said, "Your Majesty, there's an assassin in the palace who wants to kill me and my child. Your Majesty, please uphold justice for me. I'm the mother of the country and live in the depths of the imperial harem. Who on earth wants to kill me?" Ao Tianzi ordered the guards to drag the body away. "Check carefully and see if there are any clues." "Your Majesty, if I didn't have a maid who knows martial arts by my side, I'm afraid I would have been beheaded by now. I won't be able to see Your Majesty again." Ning Shu looked frightened. "Your Majesty, I'm really afraid I won't be able to see Your Majesty again." Ao Tianzi was indifferent to Ning Shu's words. His eyes were cold and emotionless. Ning Shu ignored Ao Tianzi's indifference. She wiped her tears and chattered about how she couldn't leave the emperor. Ao Tianzi looked at Ning Shu and said, "Empress, think about it carefully. Did you offend someone? Did they risk their lives to enter the palace to kill you? On my table, your father used slaves to harm the people and even killed the victim's family." All kinds of thoughts flashed through Ning Shu's mind. She said fearfully, "I'm innocent. My father is also innocent. He was going to make an example out of the Tan family. If something happened to the Tan family, her position as the empress wouldn't be stable. She would be banished to the cold palace. Whether you're innocent or not, we will send people to investigate. You stay in Pepper Palace and are not allowed to go out." Ao Tianzi flicked his sleeves and left. Ning Shu released a fine needle and shot it into Ao Tianzi's back. Ao Tianzi felt something prickling his skin, but the feeling was fleeting and disappeared very quickly. Ao Tianzi turned to look at Ning Shu. Ning Shu was holding the child in her arms. She was panicking and at a loss. When she saw Ao Tianzi staring at her, she immediately said, "Your Majesty, my father is really innocent. Please show mercy." Ao Tianzi flicked his sleeves and left. "Your Majesty!" Ning Shu shouted mournfully. "Your Majesty!" Ning Shu's mournful voice gave people goosebumps. Ning Shu felt like the world owed her an award. Ning Shu touched her neck. Her vocal cords were in pain. "Your Majesty." She cried as she helped Ning Shu up. Ning Shu was at a loss. After the guards left, Ning Shu hurriedly drank some water. Her throat was about to smoke. Ao Tianzi returned to his bedroom and saw that only 2 of the 3 hidden guards had returned. He was so angry that the blood in his chest was surging. The hidden guards who were proficient in all kinds of martial arts were still unable to kill a woman in the palace. The 2 hidden guards who were covered in ash knelt down and begged for forgiveness. This servant was careless and was sprinkled with lime. The lime entered my eyes and burned painfully. Ao Tianzi looked at the 2 hidden guards whose eyes were red. The lime entered their eyes and couldn't be washed with water. It had to be dripped with oil. Ao Tianzi frowned and looked a little impatient. "You may leave." The Empress actually prepared lime in advance. Ao Tianzi couldn't guess whether Ning Shu did it intentionally or not. In the middle of the night, Ao Tianzi felt dizzy. He took out an elixir and ate it. "Let's wait for the matter of killing the 2 children." "What did you find out?" "We found out that the ink of the painting that Li Guiren gave to Min Jiaoyi was mixed with musk." The hidden guard said. "Li Guiren?" Ao Tianzi didn't remember this person at all. There were too many women in the harem. Most of them had only seen the emperor once or twice. Then they wasted their youth in the palace. Ao Tianzi slammed the table. "Bold woman. She shall be sentenced to death." Ao Tianzi was so angry that his chest tightened. His heart was beating very fast and piercing. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and spat it on the memorial in front of him. "Master!" The hidden guard shouted at Ao Tianzi. Ao Tianzi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the blood on his finger. He was stunned for a moment. He actually spat out blood. Sure enough, it was because of anger. Ao Tianzi took out another elixir. He relaxed and didn't let his emotions get agitated. "How is Min Jiaoyi now?" Ao Tianzi asked. His mouth was filled with the taste of iron. Ao Tianzi drank a mouthful of tea and spat out the water. Her Highness Min Jiaoyi woke up. After drinking the medicine and eating something, she went back to sleep. She seemed very sad. Ao Tianzi rubbed his forehead. What could he do in this situation? The child he was looking forward to was gone. Li Guiren's painting wasn't hung in the room at all. It was impossible to say that Li Guiren's painting killed the child in Fu Min's stomach. 39/39163/L Chapter 1919. Fu Min didn't use anything given by anyone in the palace except Ao Tianzi. Even if it was given by Ao Tianzi, Fu Min would check it. Fu Min didn't dare to be careless when it concerned the child in her belly. Fu Min had to accept the things given by the concubines in the harem out of respect, but she didn't know how to use them. How could Ao Tianzi not know about it? But now, he urgently needed someone to vent his anger and die with the child. Weren't all lives in Ao Tianzi's hands? The next day, Li Guiren was tied up and tortured in all kinds of ways. He didn't want Li Guiren to die. Who told you to give Fu Min something that could harm the child? Li Guiren was neither a human nor a ghost before she died. Her death was extremely horrible. Not only that, the guards wantonly entered every concubine's palace, even the palace maids, and found some strange and dirty things. A large number of palace maids and eunuchs were involved. Some concubines in the harem found some spice to liven things up. In short, they dug out all the things in the harem and exposed them to the sun. After Li Guiren, another batch of concubines was unlucky. Li Guiren's experience made the concubines in the harem tremble with fear, fearing that such things would happen to them. They were anxious and wanted to complain to Ning Shu, but Ning Shu was now grounded and couldn't even leave the palace. The concubines had no choice but to kneel outside Ao Tianzi's palace and beg for mercy. The harem was so big that even the mother of the country was grounded. Many concubines, palace maids, and eunuchs were implicated in this incident. For a time, there were wails everywhere. During the court session, many courtiers tried to persuade Ao Tianzi not to make such a big scene. There were too many people involved. The concubines in the harem were their relatives, the daughters of their families. Ao Tianzi was furious. Why are there so many dirty things in your harem? I want children. Look at what these virtuous women have done. They didn't hesitate to hurt my children. Ao Tianzi was so angry that his heart ached and he had the urge to vomit blood. The courtiers didn't dare to say anything. If Ao Tianzi didn't participate in the consort selection, he wouldn't have so many women in his harem. Naturally, this wouldn't have happened. With so many people fighting over a single cucumber, they had to defeat their enemies in order to obtain the final victory. Anyway, it was the woman's fault. Ao Tianzi swallowed the fishy and sweet liquid in his mouth. He couldn't help but clutch at his clothes in pain. The eunuch quickly asked, "Emperor, what's wrong?" Ao Tianzi waved his hand as he clutched his chest, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. "Your Majesty, please calm down." The courtiers all knelt down and kowtowed to Ao Tianzi. Ao Tianzi's face was flushed red. Finally, he spat out a mouthful of blood and slumped weakly on the dragon throne. Cries of surprise filled his ears. Ao Tianzi was completely plunged into darkness as he saw a figure swaying in front of him. When he woke up, there was a group of concubines kneeling beside his bed, led by the empress. When Ao Tianzi saw Ning Shu, he was instantly enraged. Wasn't this woman grounded? Why was she released now? What did she think of him as the emperor? Your Majesty, you're finally awake. You scared me to death. If anything happened to you, what would happen to me and my sisters? Ning Shu cried and said. He didn't want to see these women now, but these women still came to him. Did they want him to die faster? Ao Tianzi's heart ached as if it was piercing his heart. His heart felt terrible. Seeing these crying women, Ao Tianzi was very impatient. He shouted impatiently, "Get lost! Get lost! All of you are grounded. Don't go out if there's nothing important." Ning Shu looked sadly at Ao Tianzi and said, "Your Majesty, let me stay here to take care of you. You're sick. Don't be angry anymore. The imperial physician said that your Majesty's heart hurts because of liver congestion. Don't be angry. It's all my fault. I didn't manage the harem well. But I really didn't do anything to Min Jiaoyi. Your Majesty, please investigate." Ning Shu knelt and kowtowed. Ao Tianzi's face was pale. He clutched his chest and said, "Get lost. Your Majesty, it's all my fault. Please calm down." Ning Shu kowtowed in fear and trepidation. Ao Tianzi was about to explode because of Ning Shu, who was as stupid as a pig. He only got angry when he saw these women, but they didn't know what was good for them and kept hovering in front of him. What a scam! Ao Tianzi was so angry that he wanted to die. Ao Tianzi couldn't even control his violent mood. His heart pounded and the veins on his forehead bulged as if they were about to explode. Your Majesty, I'm really worried about you. I want to stay here to take care of you. I wanted to call Min Jiaoyi over, but she's in the middle of her confinement period. A woman's health is the most important thing, so I didn't call her over. Ao Tianzi listened to Ning Shu's incessant chatter. He was so irritated that his head was about to explode. When he heard Ning Shu mention Min Jiaoyi, Ao Tianzi's heart suddenly jumped violently. He was afraid that these women would reach out to Fu Min while he was sick. Ao Tianzi took out some pills from the box at the head of the bed and swallowed one with his eyes closed. With the help of the eunuchs, he staggered to his feet and walked towards Fu Min's palace. Ning Shu immediately asked, "Your Majesty, where are you going? Do you want me to follow you?" "Shut up. You're not allowed to follow me." Ao Tianzi roared, his voice cracking. Ning Shu immediately stopped, feeling wronged. "Your Majesty, I'm worried about you." Ning Shu followed Ao Tianzi with a group of concubines. Ao Tianzi turned his head and looked at Ning Shu with eyes as cold as ice. "I said, don't follow me. Is it because you don't listen to me? Guards, kill these people." Ao Tianzi roared, clutching his chest as blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. The imperial concubines and concubines were dumbstruck. Then, they dispersed in a hubbub. Ning Shu's face was pale as she quickly left. Ao Tianzi wiped the corner of his mouth with a handkerchief. There were bright red bloodstains on the handkerchief. When they arrived at Fu Min's palace, Fu Min, who was sitting on the bed, didn't want to talk to Ao Tianzi. However, when she saw Ao Tianzi's appearance, she hurriedly got off the bed. She didn't even have time to wear her shoes. She covered her mouth and cried. "Your Majesty, what's wrong?" Ao Tianzi was helped to sit down by the eunuchs. Seeing that Fu Min was still barefooted, he said, "I'm fine. Don't cry. You're still in confinement. Be careful not to hurt your eyes. Quickly go back to bed." The eunuchs called the imperial physician over. Ao Tianzi said to the imperial physician, "Check if I've been poisoned." His heart inexplicably hurt and he even vomited blood. 39/39163/L Chapter 1920. Ao Tianzi felt that his body was strong and healthy. How could there be a problem? It could only be poison. The imperial physician quickly knelt down and took Ao Tianzi's pulse. After taking his pulse repeatedly, he finally said, "Your Majesty, there is no poison. Speaking of poison, Your Majesty has a slight pill poison. Other than that, there is nothing serious." Ao Tianzi heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that he was not poisoned. He asked again, "Then what's wrong with my heart? Why did I cough up blood?" The imperial physician took his pulse carefully. "Your Majesty's heart might be failing. It should be because of anger during this period of time. I'll give you some prescriptions. Your Majesty, if I may be so bold, please don't take any more pills. Pills have cinnabar. Although they are useful, it's not good to take too much of them. Some of them are harmful to the body. These toxins will settle in the body forever." The imperial physician took out a silver needle and used it to touch Ao Tianzi's blood. After a while, the silver needle changed color a little. It lost its previous luster. The reason why the silver needle changed color was because of the heavy metal in the pill. It was mercury, which was very harmful to the body. Ao Tianzi looked at the slightly discolored silver needle and frowned. "I understand. Go and boil the medicine." He had to find a way to cure his cough-up blood. His heart was in too much pain. Ao Tianzi expected the pill to be poisonous. However, he had to rely on the pill now. There was no other way. Even if he knew that it was a little poisonous, he would still take it. The pill could make him energetic. A little flaw was acceptable. "Your Majesty, don't be angry. I'll take it that I have no fate with this child. In my next life, this child will be reincarnated into a good family. He has nothing to do with the sisters in the harem. Don't do this for me. I can't bear it." Fu Min said. Ao Tianzi was the emperor. He was the emperor of the world. He was not an ordinary man. If this went on, Fu Min would become a vixen who charmed the country. Fu Min had read many books. She knew that in history, there were many cases where countries were destroyed because of women. These women were called beauties who brought disaster to the country. Men played and lost the country. Then, they let women bear the responsibility. The emperor was not a woman. The one who made the decisions was not a woman. How could it be a woman's responsibility? Fu Min knew that Ao Tianzi did this for her. He even wanted to clean up the harem. However, it was a little unrealistic. Since entering the harem, Fu Min had hidden some of her thoughts in the bottom of her heart. Ao Tianzi grabbed Fu Min's hand. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. I'll protect myself and you. This won't happen again. Fu Min's eyes were watery. Thank you, Your Majesty. Meeting Your Majesty is the fortune of this concubine. Ao Tianzi drank the medicine that he had just brewed and then rested in Fu Min's palace. Ning Shu returned to Pepper Palace Hall. Consort Xian, who still had half of her face, was waiting for Ning Shu. She bowed and asked, Consort, how is the emperor? Ning Shu saw that half of concubine Xian's face was purple and blue, and said, the emperor's heart was attacked by anger. It's nothing serious. Imperial concubine Xian only made an "oh" sound and said to Ning Shu, noble Lady Li, Sun Ningxue, and Wu Jieyu were all killed. Other than the three of them, what else? Ning Shu asked. I killed a few palace maids and eunuchs. Fortunately, Ao Tianzi was sick. Otherwise, if this continued, wouldn't a large number of people in the harem die? Consort, this concubine almost scared people to death. How much longer do we have to live like this? Concubine Xian thought that she had angered Ao Tianzi and had even been slapped until half of her face was swollen. Who knew when she would be killed? Ning Shu drank a mouthful of tea and had the wet nurse bring the two children over. Looking at the two white and chubby children, concubine Xian smiled no matter how distressed she was. No matter what, she still had two children. They were children that she had painstakingly given birth to. No matter how much Fu Min was favored, the children were still not born. Thinking of this, concubine Xian felt that she had a lot more to strive for in life. Ning Shu put down the teacup and picked up the two children to play with for a while. She walked into the palace and said to Ning Shu, Nyang Nyang, there's news from the residence. The servant who hit people is from the third branch. Moreover, he just entered the residence not long ago. Now, that servant has already disappeared. He did hit people, and he did kill an entire family, she said. Ning Shu facepalmed. What did father say? We must find that servant who hit people. Who gave him the right to use the Tan family's name? It's a manservant who follows the second young master of the third branch. She said, Master said that he might have been used by someone to deal with the Tan family. This servant has already passed on Consort's words to Master, asking him to restrain the servants in the residence and not let people who don't know enter the Tan family. Ning Shu rubbed his forehead. In this era, the ones who suffered the most were women. Even a manservant dared to hit a commoner with no status. No matter the time, the ones who suffered were the people at the bottom. There were grievances that couldn't be redressed, and there were grievances that couldn't be spoken out. Therefore, everyone wanted to climb up. Consort, Master asked Consort to be careful in the palace. The emperor has been acting strangely recently. She rubbed Ning Shu's temples. Ao Tianzi wasn't acting strangely. The fruit of his and Fu Min's love was gone, and he ate too many medicinal pills, so his temperament had changed. Consort. She moved closer to Ning Shu's ear and whispered, Master found out that the Taoist priest in the palace has a residence outside the palace, and there are many 12 or 13-year-old girls in the residence. The old Taoist priest is so vigorous, 11 or 12-year-old girls. Fuck, old bastard. It's not what you think, Your Highness. According to the information Master obtained, Taoist priest wants the blood of these girls. In order to maintain the purity of the blood, these girls are not allowed to eat anything. They can only drink dew. She said. Only drinking dew. Wouldn't they starve to death? Ning Shu was dumbfounded. Ning Shu frowned. She didn't know if Ao Tianzi knew about this. It wasn't easy to own a house in the capital city. Don't think that the price of a house in the ancient era wasn't expensive. It was very likely that Ao Tianzi had bestowed the house. Now, the old Taoist priest was very popular in front of Ao Tianzi. Everyone in the imperial court knew that the emperor favored the believers from outside the palace, and that they could live forever by eating medicinal pills. Even if he wasn't sure whether the old Taoist priest's actions were instructed by Ao Tianzi, Father Tan didn't dare to do anything. He might end up offending Ao Tianzi. In any case, Father Tan was often scolded by Ao Tianzi recently. With such an obvious political trend, Father Tan hoped that his daughter would be more careful in the harem. At the same time, he also wanted to investigate whether Ao Tianzi was behind this. He didn't dare to rashly expose the truth. How did you find out? Ning Shu asked. Recently, there have been many cases of young girls going missing in the capital city. Ning Shu was speechless. 39/39163/L Chapter 1921. It had been quite a few days since Ao Tianzi started taking pills. How many people would starve to death? Only drink dew. Fairies. Let the old Taoist drink dew every day. Let Ao Tianzi drink dew every day. Even menstruation can be the source of disaster. Take my menstrual strip and drink it. I guarantee you will live longer. Any race that vented their strength on the weak and cowered in the face of a strong enemy would be finished sooner or later. When the war was over, they would vent their patriotism on the women who had betrayed their country and the women who served the enemy. They would tear off the women's clothes, cut off their hair, and parade them through the streets for the public to see. They would let you know the consequences of not being patriotic. This kind of thing was not unheard of. What a bunch of patriotic young people. It can be saved. I will think of a way to get Father to restrain the people of the third branch. Everyone is of the same origin. If something happens, can the third branch get up? Dream on. In ancient times, it was popular to implicate the 9 generations. Not to mention the 9 generations, the 3 generations could completely destroy a family. Ning Shu asked Shi Er to report to the Tan family. Ao Tianzi recuperated in Fu Min's palace. The next day, Ning Shu gathered a bunch of concubines and went to Fu Min's palace. They said that they wanted to see how the emperor's injury was and would not leave until he allowed them to. Ao Tianzi was annoyed when he saw these women. He directly asked them to go back and stay in his palace. At this time, they still wanted to fight for favor and make their presence known. Did these women have any heart? Ao Tianzi was so angry that his heart hurt. The sisters in the harem came to see the emperor. Emperor should see them. Fu Min said, let them be at ease. They are very worried about the emperor, just like how I am. Don't think about them. They have too many thoughts. You don't have to speak up for them. Ao Tianzi said. Emperor, the empress is here. If I don't let her in, I don't know the rules. Fu Min said. Seeing Fu Min in such a difficult position, Ao Tianzi couldn't help but say, I won't make you wait for too long. I won't let the women in the harem bully you again. I won't let you live your days at the mercy of others. You and I will be like an ordinary couple, treating each other with respect. Fu Min forced a smile. Ao Tianzi was an emperor. Sometimes, she didn't dare to be too willful. Sometimes, she didn't even dare to say certain things out loud for fear of offending Ao Tianzi. They weren't equal. Fu Min quickly left the room and walked in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu bowed, Qinxia greets the empress. Get up. Ning Shu said. Fu Min's face was a little pale and haggard. She had yet to recover from her miscarriage. Min Jiaoyi, are you feeling better? Fu Min bowed and said, I'm much better. No need to be so courteous. Ning Shu felt that Fu Min's qi and blood were a little weak. Her face was so pale, and Ao Tianzi was sick. Instead of recuperating in his own palace, he ran to Fu Min's palace. With Ao Tianzi here, would Fu Min still be in the mood for her confinement? Ning Shu walked in with a group of concubines and bowed to Ao Tianzi on the bed. Instantly, the room was filled with the smell of cosmetics. Ao Tianzi even felt that these women had ruined the tranquility of Fu Min's palace. They were extremely vulgar. Ning Shu walked to the bedside and asked Ao Tianzi, Your Majesty, are you feeling better? I'll feel much better if the Empress doesn't come to bother me, Ao Tianzi said. Ning Shu's smile didn't change. She said without complaint, seeing that Your Majesty still has the strength to talk back to me, I'm much more relieved. Your Majesty's body is fine. Ao Tianzi felt very uncomfortable facing this Empress. It was an indescribable feeling. One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. She was enduring it. Either she loved him or she had other requests. Ao Tianzi thought of concubine Xian's 2 children, who were now being raised by the Empress. Could it be that the Empress felt that she had a bargaining chip and wanted to help the younger children to the throne? How could the Ao family's world be given to a nameless son of a secret guard who only had a serial number? Dream on if you want to rule the Ao family. Ning Shu saw Ao Tianzi staring straight at her as if he was poisoned. She couldn't help but touch her face and ask, Your Majesty, is there something on my face? Ao Tianzi snorted, I've seen it too. Go back. Ning Shu quickly bowed and nagged Ao Tianzi to pay attention to her body. Ao Tianzi ignored Ning Shu's words. He regretted not getting Fu Min pregnant earlier. Previously, he made Fu Min use contraception because no children were born in the harem. Even if she was pregnant, it was impossible for the child to be born because she wasn't a descendant of the imperial family. In order to protect Fu Min, he didn't want her to show off too much. Ao Tianzi's previous plan was to get rid of the imperial harem so that no one could threaten Fu Min's existence. This way, no one would say anything no matter what he did. But plans couldn't keep up with changes. Ning Shu bowed and shot out a ray of energy from his finger under his long sleeve. The destructive power of the fiery sun shot into Ao Tianzi's forehead. Ao Tianzi felt as if his forehead was stung by something. He had been stung by something before, and now he had this feeling again. He touched his forehead, but there was nothing. Ao Tianzi scanned the people in the room. Ao Tianzi waved his hand at the Empress and the imperial concubines who were bowing respectfully. Ning Shu retreated out of the room and bowed to Fu Min, Farewell, Your Majesty. Min Jiaoyi, you should cultivate more. This kind of thing is the most harmful to a woman's body. Ning Shu said. As for whether Fu Min listened or not, Ning Shu didn't care. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your concern. Fu Min pressed her body and squatted a little, appearing very respectful. Get up. After Ning Shu and the others left, Fu Min got up. When she got up, her face was a little pale. Ao Tianzi said, You are so cautious. With me here, you don't have to be afraid. Your Majesty is also concerned about me. Fu Min was slightly out of breath. She did that for me. Ao Tianzi shook his head. You think she is sincere, but I have seen through the women in the imperial harem. Fu Min didn't say anything. The pain of losing her son couldn't be overcome for a while. The imperial physician said that it was because of her weak body that she couldn't keep the child. Fu Min was a little exhausted. Especially when Ao Tianzi was here, Fu Min had to take care of him. Tired, very tired. There was no woman in the imperial harem who wasn't tired. The emperor really dotes on Min Jiaoyi. Concubine Xian sighed. The emperor always stays in Min Jiaoyi's palace when he is unwell. Our emperor only trusts Min Jiaoyi. Ning Shu didn't comment. What was there to dote on? Concubine Xian was originally in confinement, but now she had to take care of Ao Tianzi. Besides, the two of them couldn't have sex in their current condition. 39/39163/L. Chapter 1922. Ning Shu didn't have any feelings for Fu Min. The women in the harem had no choice. Those who were favored had no choice. As for the plot, Fu Min asked Ao Tianzi to send these concubines back to their families, probably because she felt that the cold palace wasn't a place for people to stay. They would either die or go crazy. In comparison, it was better to send them back to their families. Moreover, they would have relatives to protect them. However, Fu Min didn't expect that the emperor's women would never go home, let alone remarry. Who would dare to want the emperor's women unless they were tired of living? Even if the emperor didn't want them. What if these women went home and couldn't bear the loneliness and cuckolded the emperor? Therefore, Ao Tianzi killed all the women in the harem. Those who drank poisoned wine drank poisoned wine, those who hanged themselves hung themselves, and those who slit their throats slit their throats. Anyway, they couldn't live. From several contacts with Fu Min, Ning Shu felt that Fu Min was a woman who knew how to adapt to circumstances. At least on the surface, she didn't act presumptuously because she was favored and didn't look down on the empress. It was natural for her to be complacent after gaining power. However, Fu Min was still able to stay calm. Her temperament was good. Thanks to Ao Tianzi's protection, Fu Min should be the cleanest woman in the harem. There were some things that couldn't be envied. As for the child in her belly, it was entirely because of Ao Tianzi's health. Your Highness, have the assassins in the palace been caught? Concubine Xian recalled that an assassin had entered Pepper's hall. Ning Shu asked. No. This matter would definitely be left unsettled. Ning Shu didn't take this matter to heart. Those who could enter and leave the palace freely must be Ao Tianzi's secret guards. After dealing with Ao Tianzi, would these secret guards be of use? Ning Shu also thought of another thing. That was, the two children who were almost half a year old still did not have an official name. They only had nicknames and did not have official names on the family tree. No, she had to quickly let the two children register. Otherwise, when the time came, even if they inherited the family tree, without a name, they would not be recognized by the family. The imperial family was also a big clan. However, he had to find Ao Tianzi and ask him to name the two children. Not to mention the two children, he had to give the boy a name. The two children still didn't have a name, which showed how much Ao Tianzi disliked them. Have you thought of names for the two children? Ning Shu's concubine Xian asked. Consort Xian was stunned for a moment before remembering that the two children didn't even have proper names and weren't listed in the genealogy. They were illegitimate children. Consort Xian's expression changed. Your Highness, now that the two children are growing up under your care, your Highness should make plans for the two children. Ning Shu nodded. This consort naturally knows. As for the boy's name, this consort will think of a way to have His Majesty bestow a name. As for the girl's name, you should think of one. You are the child's mother. Fortunately, you were born with great difficulty. This concubine thanks the Empress for her grace. Concubine Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Consort Xian thought for a while and gave the girl a name, Xiao Lei. Xiao, a little bamboo, represented modesty, politeness, determination, and motivation. Lei, a flower bud, represented blooming in hope. Ao Xiao Lei. Ning Shu looked at the words on the white paper. When the time comes, when the emperor bestows a name to the boy, we will go to the imperial jade butterfly together. Many thanks, Your Highness. Consort Xian bowed. Luckily, the Empress was here. If it was her, she really wouldn't know what to do. If the child couldn't go to the imperial jade butterfly, it wouldn't be able to prove her identity. Without identity, she would be no different from a servant in the harem. How could Consort Xian accept the fact that the child she gave birth to was like a wild child? The next day, Ning Shu went to Fu Min's palace to visit Ao Tianze again. This time, Ao Tianze saw that Ning Shu came alone and didn't bring a large group of people, so he was slightly less angry. However, when he saw Ning Shu's face, Ao Tianze was still very angry. Ning Shu looked at Ao Tianze, whose eyes were slightly red, and bowed to ask, "Your Majesty, are you feeling better?" "Ao Tianze. Didn't you see me yesterday? This concubine's heart is not at ease if you keep asking." Ning Shu said without complaint. "This concubine greets the Empress." Fu Min bowed. Ning Shu reached out to help Fu Min up. He touched Fu Min's pulse with his finger. She had a blood deficiency and weak vital energy. She didn't recuperate well. Ning Shu said gently, "This concubine sees that Min Zhaoyi's face is a bit pale. This concubine has donkey hide gelatin, which is very good for a woman's body. This concubine will have someone send some over." Fu Min's face revealed a smile. "This concubine thanks the Empress." When Fu Min smiled like this, there was a faint luster in her eyes. It seemed that there was sincerity in it, which made people feel comfortable. Ao Tianze saw that Ning Shu was actually chatting with Fu Min and ignored him. He said coldly, "What is the Empress doing here?" "This concubine came to take a look at your Majesty's body. Your Majesty's forehead is red. What happened?" Ning Shu looked at Ao Tianze and asked. There were red marks between his eyebrows and the bridge of his nose. It should be caused by pinching the bridge of his nose. "Nothing happened to me." Ao Tianze didn't have a headache for the whole night. Whenever his head hurt, he would pinch the bridge of his nose. Moreover, he ate several medicinal pills in one night. It was very uncomfortable to have a headache. Ning Shu made an "oh" sound, bowed and said, "Your Majesty, this concubine came for a matter. The two children are now half a year old, but they don't have proper names yet. So, Your Majesty, please bestow names to the children." The two children didn't have a baptism ceremony or a 1-month-old celebration. Until now, they didn't have names. There was no way around it, although they weren't of the Ao family's bloodline. Hearing this, Ao Tianze raised his eyebrows. He pulled the corner of his mouth and sneered. "We'll talk about names later. You want to be on the Imperial Jade Butterfly? Dream on. As long as you're on the Imperial Jade Butterfly, you can enjoy the royal treatment. If you're not my child, you can eat my food." Forget about being a father, Ao Tianze would never be a concubine. Ao Tianze's refusal was expected by Ning Shu. He knelt and asked Ao Tianze to say, "It's not easy for the two children. Your Majesty, please bestow names to them." Zhen said, "We'll talk about this later. Empress, you're dismissed." Ao Tianze's expression became more and more ugly. His whole body was filled with coldness and ruthlessness. Ning Shu had no choice but to retreat first. After Ning Shu left, Fu Min said to Ao Tianze, "Those two children are also the Emperor's children. It's time for them to be on the Imperial Jade Butterfly. Only the children you give birth to are Zhen's children. Zhen doesn't recognize those two children." Ao Tianze's brows were filled with ruthlessness. His head was aching faintly. Ao Tianze couldn't help but pinch the space between his eyebrows. Fu Min reached out and rubbed Ao Tianze's head. "It's this concubine's incompetence. This concubine couldn't protect the two children. However, they are the Emperor's bloodline after all." Fu Min couldn't describe what she was feeling. Thailand's busty female streamer's new erotic video was exposed. She pounced on the male lead so hungry. Please follow the official WeChat account and watch it online. Chapter 1923. It was a great honor for Ao Tianze to treat her like this, as if he had set his mind on her. But seeing him treat others so coldly, she wondered if she would end up like this coldness one day. Fu Min, who lost her children, fell into a sorrowful state of mind. In short, she was always worried about gains and losses and liked to overthink. Fu Min rubbed Ao Tianze's head, but the headache didn't ease at all. Instead, it became more and more painful, as if there were needles pricking his head. Consort Xian had been waiting for Ning Shu for a long time, wanting to hear the emperor's name as soon as possible. Seeing Ning Shu's sullen face, her heart sank. Is the emperor unwilling to give them names? The emperor refuses. We'll talk about this later. Ning Shu picked up the teacup and drank. Consort Xian looked a little dazed, puzzled and confused. Why does the emperor treat me like this? What did I do wrong? The biggest mistake was not letting the children be born. These 2 children should have turned into a pool of blood. Now that they were born, it would only make Ao Tianze very angry. Ao Tianze was expected to be unhappy about being given names and receiving royal treatment. It was also obvious that he didn't give them names. Ning Shu didn't want to tell Consort Xian that these were not Ao Tianze's children. The fewer people who knew about this, the safer it would be. There are other ways to solve this. Ning Shu said directly. Ning Shu went to find the clan head and some of the imperial family's highly respected Wuxia. She said that the emperor's heirs had withered. Now that he finally had 2 children, the emperor didn't bestow them names, nor did he give them the imperial jade butterfly. He didn't want the 2 children to have any names, so it wasn't a big deal. Moreover, they were twins. The dragon and the phoenix were auspicious, which was a good sign. He asked the patriarch and some elders to help persuade the emperor. The elders had to give face to the empress, so they went to the palace to persuade Ao Tianze. Ao Tianze received the elders in the imperial study. When he heard these people's request, he was speechless. He didn't expect the empress to go to the clan. The empress was really racking her brains for these 2 children. The more this was the case, the more Ao Tianze refused to give the child a name. After all, the child was not a member of the Ao family. Ao Tianze directly rejected the clan's request, saying that he would give the child a name when he was older. This child had suffered from many illnesses since he was young. What if something happened to him after he was given a name? It was hard to say about Ao Tianze. This child was not the son of the Ao family. Not to mention that the concubines in the harem were all served by secret guards, which was against the moral principles. If the officials of the imperial court knew about it, they would all jump up and remonstrate with him, calling him a fatuous emperor. The people of the clan looked at each other. What kind of reason was this? Thus, the old clan leader said, the emperor's children are indeed withered. He can give the child a simpler name. There won't be any good fortune. In any case, the child has the jade butterfly. If he didn't go, he wouldn't go. Ao Tianze felt uncomfortable all over. Why are these people blabbering when they don't know the truth? Not only did he have to wear a green hat, he had to wear it on his head. Your Majesty, when the 2 children have the jade butterfly, they might be able to have a prosperous family, the old clan leader said with a trembling voice. There was a custom among the people. Families without children would buy little girls so that when they had children, they could give birth to their own children. If it was a boy, the adopted little girl could become a child bride. Ao Tianze rubbed his eyebrows. He had a terrible headache, as if something sharp was stabbing his head in his head. Ao Tianze took out an elixir and ate one. His eyes were a little red, which made the members of the imperial clan frown. Why was the emperor so obsessed with these things and favored those foreign believers? There were many nobles who pursued immortality and wanted to enjoy glory and wealth forever. However, these people usually died earlier than anyone else. The old clan leader used his walking stick to hit the floor and said, "Your Majesty, you can't eat these things anymore. The old clan leader was thinking for the entire clan. After all, the AO family was the royal family. They had to work for the benefit of the royal family. The world belonged to the AO family. In fact, the world was controlled by the aristocratic families, and the royal family was the biggest aristocratic family. If Huang Shan died from eating the elixir, the AO family would have no heir. He had to let the little girl in the harem have the jade butterfly. Ao Tianzi was very annoyed. A group of officials in the imperial court kept talking, and now the people in the ancestral temple kept talking. Did they all want to force him to death? Your Majesty, give the little prince a simple name. This way, he won't lose his fortune, the old clan leader said. Ao Tianzi felt that he was in trouble. His head was about to explode, and there was a fire burning in his heart. He directly swept the things on the imperial table to the floor, and the people in the room immediately knelt down. Your Majesty, please don't be angry. Your Majesty, please think for the AO family. Your Majesty has no heir, and the imperial court is not stable. Even if something happened, the harem would have an heir, and it wouldn't stop the bloodline of the emperor. All Ao Tianzi wanted was to fight for the best things for Fu Min. He wanted to leave all the good things for Fu Min. If Fu Min gave birth to a child, he would make Fu Min's child the crown prince. Only then can this world belong to the Ao clan, and not to a bastard. I am the emperor. No matter what I do, I have my considerations. Everything is beneficial to the country. You don't have to say any more. Ao Tianzi didn't want to give the two bastards in the harem a name at all. In your dreams. It seemed that the empress in the harem was going to be removed. She was always stirring up trouble. Ao Tianzi rubbed his forehead. The large group of people in the room was simply annoying. The clan members present couldn't figure out why Ao Tianzi didn't want to give the child a name. Could it be like what the empress said, that the emperor only recognized Min Zhaoyi's child, and the child wasn't even born yet, and he was even planning for a child that didn't have a shadow? What could the clan members say? Your Majesty is just a name. Your Majesty is in the prime of his life, and there will be many heirs in the future. The more heirs, the more prosperous the family will be. Ao Tianzi laughed in his heart. So what if it's prosperous? Isn't it a fight for power? The old clan leader said, when it's prosperous, there will be more choices. Only through fighting can we determine who is the most suitable person to sit on the throne. If the one sitting on the throne was an incompetent or fatuous person, if he could protect the AO family's world. The fight in the royal family was just to select the most suitable person to become the emperor. Courage, wisdom, strategy, fate, all of these were indispensable. The old clan leader was speaking the truth. The emperor climbed the stairs of bone step by step to the throne. If he wanted to enjoy supreme power, he had to endure the loneliness at the top. If he wanted to wear the crown, he had to bear its weight first. Ao Tianzi couldn't bear to let his and Fu Min's child fight with others. Moreover, he believed that his child would definitely be a wise emperor. That was how he felt. He didn't need his child to endure this. The cruelty of the royal family didn't want his child to experience it. The bold video of a child with a huge chest dripping with fragrant sweat and 2 feet of balls almost overflowing. Please follow the WeChat public number EI New May 222. Chapter 1924. Ao Tianzi's heart ached at the thought of his unborn child, a lump of flesh and blood. His heart ached more and more. Ao Tianzi clutched his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. Your Majesty, what's wrong? Everyone saw Ao Tianzi's face turn red as if blood was about to drip out. Ao Tianzi spat out blood. Because of the noise, Ao Tianzi had a headache and took 2 pills in a row. Ao Tianzi's head and heart ached. Ao Tianzi spat out blood, which scared everyone. Could it be that he was poisoned or that there was something wrong with his body? The emperor was still so young. Everyone wanted to find an identity for the only prince in the harem. I'm fine. Ao Tianze felt better after spitting out blood. Let's not talk about this anymore. Your Majesty. Everyone knelt down and cried. They insisted that Ao Tianze name a jade butterfly. Now that Ao Tianze was spitting out blood, what if he suddenly died? In order to protect the Ao family, they must let Ao Tianze have a legitimate descendant. Ao Tianze panted heavily and glared at the people kneeling on the ground. He closed his eyes and then opened them again. He picked up a brush and dipped it in the cinnabar used to mark the memorials. He was so annoyed that he wrote down the word mediocre, the word for mediocre. I'll give you this name. Ao Tianze said coldly. With so many people here, if he didn't give them an explanation, they wouldn't let it go. Damn it, he couldn't say that the child wasn't his. It was so frustrating to be the emperor. Although it was a word for mediocre, it was still a name. The boy's name was Ao Yong. I have another secret edict. Ao Tianze wrote the edict and stamped it with the imperial seal. Ao Yong will never inherit the throne. The people looked at each other, but they still accepted the edict. Ao Tianze rubbed the space between his eyebrows. After the people from the clan left, Ao Tianze swallowed another pill. Now, whenever Ao Tianze felt uncomfortable, he would take medicinal pills even more frequently than before, which made the group of clansmen very worried. Those who ate pills all died early. Just like that, the two children got a jade butterfly. The eldest prince was called Ao Yong and the eldest princess was called Ao Xiaolei. He could be considered a member of the royal family. When imperial concubine Xian saw the word Yong, she was stunned. She covered her mouth and started crying. Why did the emperor give the child such a name? When ordinary people saw the word mediocre, the first thing they would think of was vulgar, muddle-headed, and incompetent. Concubine Xian was very sad. It was already the greatest victory for the child to be able to get on Jade Butterfly. Mediocrity can be muddle-headed, but it can also be mediocre. Mediocre means mediocrity. The middle finger is not biased, and mediocrity is not easy. The way of the mean could also be understood as the way of the sovereign. Consort Xian raised her head and looked at Ning Shu. Really? That's true. Although the word mediocre seems ordinary and even has a demeaning meaning, it's not the case when you think about it carefully. There's no need to be sad. Perhaps our emperor has high hopes for the child. Of course, Ning Shu was just spouting nonsense. Ao Tianze gave him the word mediocre, just to mock and belittle him. Why did Ao Tianze bestow him a name so easily? Could it be that Ao Tianze was plotting something? Ning Shu personally asked the clan members, but they didn't say anything. Ning Shu asked the eunuch who served Ao Tianze. Of course, he didn't serve Ao Tianze personally. After bribing him a little, the eunuch said that there seemed to be a secret edict. A secret edict. The secret edict was definitely in the hands of the Ao clan's clansmen. It was impossible to snatch it openly. He didn't know what was written on the edict, but it was very likely to be related to Ao Yong. Ning Shu returned to his pepper hall and lined up the people who were going to the imperial study. This thing could only be in the hands of the clan's princes. If the secret edict didn't allow Ao Yong to inherit the throne, then there were plenty of princes in the clan. They could just adopt one of them. What would Ao Yong have to do? The secret edict was a big problem. Ning Shu propped up his chin and looked at the two white and chubby children in the cradle. He didn't know if they could withstand the coming storm. In the middle of the night, Ning Shu slipped out of the palace in his night clothes. He went to each of the princes' mansions to look for the secret edict. He didn't even let the old clan leaders' mansions go. Finally, he found the secret edict in the mansion of Prince Li. As soon as he saw that it was Prince Li, Ning Shu understood most of the situation. Damn, Ao Tianzi actually gave the secret edict to Prince Li so that Ao Yong wouldn't have the chance to become the emperor. Prince Li had 3 sons. Moreover, the eldest son was skilled in civil and military affairs. He was even more handsome. If Ao Tianzi died and didn't have an heir, he would be the most likely person to inherit the throne. He felt that Ao Tianzi seemed to have realized something and was preparing for a rainy day. He seemed to be calculating something. Ning Shu used his spiritual power to scan the mansion inch by inch. Finally, he found the secret edict in the plaque in the main hall. Ning Shu looked at the secret edict to see if it was real. However, very few people dared to fake an imperial edict. The handwriting was Ao Tianzi's, and there was also the seal of the nation. The reason why he recognized Ao Tianzi's handwriting was because there was an imperial edict in Pepper's Hall. After getting the item, Ning Shu avoided the night patrolling guards of Prince Li's hall. With the help of his spiritual power, Ning Shu returned to the palace. Of course, there were also various kinds of excuses. There were many secret guards hidden in the harem. With the help of his spiritual power, Ning Shu bypassed these secret guards and returned to Pepper's Hall. With so many people watching, Ning Shu suspected that he was being watched when he went to the toilet. Back at Pepper's Hall, Ning Shu glanced at the imperial edict. He opened the incense burner and threw the imperial edict inside. The cloth emitted smoke and began to turn black. Ning Shu drank tea and stayed by the incense burner. He opened the window and let the smoke out so that it wouldn't choke the children. Your Highness. When the servant girl who was sleeping on the table saw Ning Shu sitting beside her, she immediately stood up. How did she fall asleep? She glanced at the child in the cradle and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the child was fine. Ning Shu grunted in acknowledgement. Without the imperial edict, Ning Shu's heart was much more at ease. It was best to be able to openly inherit the throne. The reason why he did so many things was to let Ao Tianzi have a suitable way to die. A young emperor's sudden death would inevitably cause waves. But what if Ao Tianzi died from eating pills? What if his body was emptied by pills? There would always be a fig leaf to let people have a reasonable explanation for the emperor's death. Moreover, the imperial physicians had advised Ao Tianzi to eat less pills more than once, but Ao Tianzi refused to listen. When the time came, it would be revealed that the emperor had imprisoned young girls for the sake of the young girls' pure menstrual cycle. It would cast a layer of color on the emperor's death. Oh my, I'm really worried sick. Ning Shu wanted to proclaim himself king, but the group of clansmen of the Ao family would definitely eat her up. Even if they didn't have any children, there were still other clansmen. It wouldn't be the turn of an empress to ascend the throne. The mixed-blood female streamer forgot to turn off the camera after live streaming. Her private life was exposed. Please follow the official WeChat account to see the female May 222 online. Chapter 1925. Besides, Ning Shu wasn't sure if Tan Yusin could be the queen. If she couldn't be the empress, she could be the regent empress. These people still had to kneel when they saw a woman. Wahahaha, Ao Tianzi used more and more pills. He had to take them when he had a headache and when his heart ached. Once he got angry, he would feel weak all over. Ao Tianzi used a lot of pills. Every time old Taoist refined some pills, Ao Tianzi would finish them quickly and ask for more from old Taoist. Old Taoist had always thought that the rarer something was, the more expensive it was. But Ao Tianzi's speed of eating made old Taoist feel uneasy. Pills were made of clay balls. If it was too easy, it would arouse suspicion. Ao Tianzi was furious when he heard old Taoist's excuse. His face and eyes turned red. He said that if old Taoist didn't refine enough pills, he would chop old Taoist's head. Old Taoist was speechless. During the court session, Ao Tianzi was opposed by the courtiers. No matter what Ao Tianze wanted to announce, there would be objections. Sometimes, there would be a stalemate. Ao Tianze's head hurt. He was so angry that he vomited another mouthful of blood. The courtiers were scared to death. If the emperor vomited blood because of anger, they, the courtiers, should bear the crime of disloyalty. They waited outside the bedchamber for the imperial physician to come out. After a long time, the imperial physician finally came out. He was caught by the officials and asked how the emperor was doing and whether it was serious. The imperial physician said, "His Majesty is a little overworked. His body is a little weak." In other words, his body was hollowed out. An impatient person said directly, "His Majesty vomited blood. What happened to make him vomit blood? His Majesty is just suffering from excessive internal heat. I'll prescribe him some medicine. His Majesty will be healthy again after some rest." The court officials were skeptical. What do you mean by vomiting blood due to excessive internal heat? Even if they didn't know anything about medicine, they could tell that Ao Tianze's body was like an inflated water tank filled with hot water and magma. The imperial physician was crying in his heart. The emperor had taken too many pills. Now, the emperor's body was like a water tank with holes all over. Even if he poured water into it, it would not be able to hold any water. Moreover, the pill poison was still dormant in the body, which was why the emperor's head was so painful. In modern terms, heavy metals damaged the cranial nerves. The imperial physician felt that Ao Tianze's body could not hold on for much longer. The vitality in his body was about to leak out. To the outside world, he could only say that the emperor was in good health. Otherwise, the emperor would be the first to kill him. The courtiers stood guard outside the hall. When Ao Tianze woke up, they were sent back to their respective homes. Ao Tianze clutched his chest. He could feel his own body. Could it be that the aftereffects of taking the elixir had arrived so quickly? The more pain he felt, the more he would eat. The more he ate, the more his body would be unable to bear the pain. It was a vicious cycle. "Call Min Jiaoyi over," Ao Tianze said to the eunuch beside him. The eunuch did not dare to delay and went to Fu Min's palace. When Fu Min heard that something had happened to Ao Tianze, she went to Ao Tianze's bedroom without looking at the children's clothes she had sewn. As soon as Fu Min walked into the hall, she saw Ao Tianze sitting on the bed dejectedly. His eyes were clear and bright, but they were filled with melancholy. His monarch aura had softened a lot, making him look like an elegant scholar. Fu Min's heart softened. It hurt a little. "You're here." Ao Tianze smiled at Fu Min. Fu Min's tears immediately fell. "Your Majesty. Sit down. Let me take a good look at you," Ao Tianze said to Fu Min with a pale face. Fu Min sat on the bed. "Your Majesty, what's wrong? Don't scare me." Ao Tianze wiped Fu Min's tears. "I'm afraid I can't make it. I don't feel at ease leaving you alone in the harem. Take this will. If I really pass away, you will be the Empress Dowager. No one can do anything to you." Fu Min was stunned. Ao Tianze was so young and in his prime. How could he not make it? "Your Majesty." Fu Min's tears fell on Ao Tianze's hand. "I just regret not letting you have a child earlier. If I pass away, you'll be so lonely." Ao Tianze thought he had plenty of time to plan, but he did not know when something went wrong. Hearing Ao Tianze's words, Fu Min felt like a knife was being twisted in her heart. "Your Majesty, please don't let anything happen to you. I'm scared." "Don't be scared. Even if I really pass away, I won't let the harem women hurt you." Ao Tianze held Fu Min's hand. "You're the woman I love the most in my life." Fu Min's hot tears fell on the back of Ao Tianze's hand. She could not control her emotions and wanted to wail. "No, I'm scared. I'm scared." When Fu Min thought of Ao Tianze leaving her, she felt as if her spine had been pulled out. She was terrified and helpless. Fu Min never thought that Ao Tianzi would pass away so soon. It was said that emperors were either short-lived or killed. But Ao Tianzi was so young. Especially when Ao Tianzi was still making plans for her. Fu Min's heart was extremely complicated. She loved this man, but she also knew that this man did not belong to her. She had to swallow all the bitterness and bitterness. Her life was not up to her. She loved and feared Ao Tianzi. I'm a little tired. Put away the imperial edict and leave. Ao Tianzi closed his eyes slightly. Fu Min was reluctant to leave. She kept crying and looked extremely miserable. But Ao Tianzi felt that the current Fu Min was a beauty he had never seen before. Let's go. Ao Tianzi smiled and waved at Fu Min. As soon as Fu Min left, Ao Tianzi's face darkened. He ordered the chamberlain to call the general in charge of guarding the imperial city. The order was to capture all the concubines in the harem, except for Fu Min. The general was dumbfounded. What was wrong with the emperor? Even the empress? Kill without mercy. Kill the 2 children as well. Ao Tianzi said directly and decisively. He killed the concubines in the harem and the mother of the nation. Was it really okay to kill them without even giving them a charge? Would he be wiped out when the time came? The imperial court and the harem were closely related. If he was not captured by these concubines, their families would hate him to death. He had offended almost half of the imperial court. The general cursed in his heart and quickly knelt on the ground to wake Ao Tianzi up. Ao Tianzi felt that his body could not take it anymore. It was a feeling that he could not continue. These concubines in the harem were extremely vicious. If he died, no one would protect Fu Min. Fu Min was also a person with clean hands. Although she was well-read, she was not a scheming person. That imperial edict could only give Fu Min an outstanding position in the harem, but it could not guarantee that she would live well in the harem. He could only eliminate these women. No matter who became the emperor in the future, Fu Min would be the empress dowager with an outstanding position. Ao Tianzi knew that the concubines in the harem were jealous of his love for Fu Min, so he could only eliminate them. Thailand's busty female streamer's new erotic video exposed pouncing on the male lead. I'm so thirsty. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.